Okay, let me turn the music down a little bit. Hello for those who are here early. Oh, let's get this shit going. So we gotta start from match 2, game 1, because I want to go match 1, then match 2, then match 1, game 2, then match 2, game 2, so on and so forth. Like my mic volume? Potentially. I also turned the music down really, really low. So I think the music was here last time. Hold up. Sorry for the squeak. Moving my mic. Let's pop it there. Get a little bit closer. Is that better? Because also I am going to be talking like this volume once we start going. If not, I can still turn it up some more. Okay, cool. Yeah. I was just slightly too far away. This mic is super sensitive in a good way. So yeah, I just need it to be close to my mouth. There we go. Alrighty. So, with the stuff I went over last time, I'm going to be going over these games much, much faster. Really? Oh, okay. If that's the case, then I can still just turn it up a little bit. Because I'm not peaking yet. I am actually at 100. Let me see. Can I fix this? Nope. Okay. How do I up you past 100 like I could on normal OBS? Huh. I actually don't know how to move it up any higher. So that's a slight problem. Restrictor performance mode filter. Yeah, it's literally at 100. I don't think I can bump it up any higher. Or let me rephrase that. I'm sure there's a way. I just don't know what the way is. And when I looked on YouTube, everything sounded okay. So I'm not sure. Single set, twice time step. Yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry for the squeak again. That's fine. I'll just be right next to my mic this entire time then. Try to compensate. Yeah, because I looked on YouTube and like there were times where I got quiet, but it was like I had to go away. Like kind of what I just did there. And those were the only times I was a little quiet. Everything else sounded fine. Audio-wise. I have no idea. It could also be like your computer volume and the Twitch volume are two separate things. So maybe the computer volume is low and Twitch volume was at 100 kind of thing. It could also be I just legitimately have my stuff quieter. 100% could be the case. Anyways. Yeah, get going. Because if the VOD is looking fine, we should be good to go. Especially since I'm much closer to my mic this time. It's going to be louder. So, let me do one of these. Do one of those. Actually, let me just... one sec. I have to double check that I don't have any like files open I'm not supposed to have open. Like personal player notes, things along the lines of that. Okay, nope, we're good. Fantastic. Alright. So, again, I'm going to be going over things much, much faster. If I ever say look back at X moment, I'm probably talking about the match 1, game 1, the 5.5 hour VOD where I go much more in depth. And because realistically, even in that game where it took 5.5 hours to go over everything, we got through the first 16 minutes of gameplay for each role. That was it. We didn't get into the macro stuff. All right. On top of that, I was saying probably half of the stuff I wanted to because time constraints. Because again, normally whenever I work with a player, to get through the first 10 minutes of gameplay, when it's like going over everything in detail to clicks, everything, it generally takes about 2.5 hours. So 2.5 hours for one person for 10 minutes of gameplay, 5.5 hours for 10 players. I have to cut a lot of things. I remember. So, quick thing, similar concept. So, in match 2, this was the lower elo games, where realistically, the unfortunate reality is this was a tryout, right? And it's a tryout looking for the top 10, potentially 12 to 14 best players. And we're taking those players, putting them into varsity, JV, and getting some subs. That is most likely still the goal. I think we're still on that plan. Because it's also up to Brent as well, because Brent has more control over things than I do. I'm basically just, think of me as an independent contractor for all intents and purposes. So, with this, right, lower elo players generally won't make it. Because most of the time, lower elo players are down there for a reason. Whether it's attitude, whether it's just not enough game knowledge, whether it's you don't have the ability to click fast enough to be able to do things, whether through lack of actually playing the game, or like maybe you literally have nerve damage in your hand and you just have to play lock screen kind of thing. That will affect your rank as well. Right? So a lot of things along the lines of that. So realistically, these lower games were basically stated as, all right, show me you can function. Because realistically, within probably a month and a half, the goal is to be able to compete with High Diamond. The team should be able to deal with a High Diamond team functionally. So most of these players don't have that capability. So when we made these games, we had it with raw power versus counter engage. Right? If you look at all the drafts, they're basically the same concept. And we had to move things around slightly, just purely due to the fact of people don't have champion pools at this elo either. So there are people who play maybe one champion, maybe two. We even looked over some of the people's accounts, and we could only see 2 champions with like a little spatter of a third every once in a while. And we had to actually hard consider, do they not own that champion that they picked? Was it like free week rotation kind of thing? Need to find a new champion pool too? Yeah. But so with that, it's so hard to be able to make these games cleanly when no one plays anything. And realistically, if you play nothing, you're not going to function in competitive settings because bans exist, and bans can look at you and specifically state, no, you're not allowed to play your main champion. You have to have backups, right? Because there are multiple tournament games where literally I will find the weakest link champion pool wise or player wise and just send 5 bans their way and say, all right, we're going to play this game 5v4. That's our game plan. And generally it works. So if you can't play enough champions, we would have to blind pick you something. If we have to blind pick you something, already after your top 3 champions have been removed, well then, now you're counterpicked on your 4th best champion, but you only played 2 champions, so now you feed uncontrollably, it's still a 5v4, right? So in these games, we're literally looking for any standouts whatsoever. And generally, we're looking for standouts in the early game on left side, or let me phrase this, in the late game on left side and the early game on right side. Because this side's supposed to be the raw power. If this side magically has a winning early game, something is inherently wrong. Right? Because for instance, Aatrox versus GP is a matchup where if GP plays absolutely perfectly, the Aatrox won't snowball, won't get any kills. Even Halo one-trick ponies have difficulties? Yes, 100%, absolutely. That's why you can't be a one-trick pony in competitive play at all. It just doesn't exist. But anyways, so Aatrox has the ability to kill Gangplank unless Gangplank plays absolutely perfectly, spaces properly, calls for jungle assistance when he's starting to get low on mana, right? But if he spaces improperly even a single time, Aatrox can just one-tap him. Should that occur in Perfect World? No, not at all. And then eventually, Gangplank gets to the point where he can just start killing the Aatrox on repeat because Aatrox despises being permaslowed. And Gangplank has so much damage output that becomes a massive problem, right? So if Gangplank wins the early game, we can state, okay, good note here, red flag here, right? In similar context, right? If Lilia has a massive lead on this Rek'Sai, it either means, okay, this entire team decide not to die to the Rek'Sai, which in lower elo is generally relatively difficult to do because people don't jungle track, people don't pay attention to things, people don't know wave states, right? So if this person is accelerated, that is standard, right? If all of these don't die to the Rek'Sai and the Rek'Sai is not accelerated, that's a plus to all of these people, right? And similar context, right? If this Lilia gets hyper accelerated off of killing people, but there's a misfortune, there's a Vladimir who should not be dying to this except for through Cage. Excuse me, and an Aatrox who definitely should not be dying to Lilia in the early stages, we have a problem, right? But then what also happens if Rek'Sai, the champion that falls off the face of the planet at 2 items, functions later in the game? Fantastic. Absolutely phenomenal, right? Or what happens if Vladimir has the ability to just solo kill the Vagar, which isn't supposed to be happening? Fantastic. What happens if Vagar, all of a sudden in the early game, also is solo killing Vlad? Phenomenal. Those are the kind of things we're looking at, right? Basically in all the games, strong side, or a strong early game, weak late game, weak early game, strong late game. Very, very simplistic. Show me you can push buttons, basically, right? So, when we're looking at the runes to start with, let me pull this up. For Aatrox, we're looking at Conqueror, Triumph, Bloodline, Coup de Grace, Second Wind, Revitalize. Okay. Most of these are wrong. I'm going to touch on why. So, realistically, for Aatrox, the majority of what your damage output is not auto attacks, and lifesteal only applies to auto attacks, or things that state this is, or it applies on hit effects. So like Gangplank's Q applies on hit effects and can crit, it applies lifesteal, right? Nasus Q, auto reset, works. Things like that. Renekton W applies lifesteal. So, with this, Bloodline actually doesn't do anything for Aatrox. If you actually wanted more healing, you actually want Alacrity. Because whenever you hit an opposing champion with an auto attack or an ability, it reduces the cooldown of your passive. This passive will heal you more than Bloodline ever will. Plus, on top of that, if you're looking for damage output, you get massive AD as Aatrox because of what your ultimate does. So Alacrity also brings up a metric shit ton of damage as well, along with giving you more healing than what Bloodline would provide. But the standard then becomes Tenacity for Aatrox, because he doesn't care that much about attack speed. He's generally weaving in auto after ability, so auto ability, auto ability, auto ability. Why do we need attack speed to have that pattern? Right? And then also, you care about being able to hit your targets. The only time Aatrox runs into issues is either A, he can't reach his targets, so Ziggs should be nowhere near Aatrox, for instance, so Aatrox has no ability to hit him, runs into an issue. Or B, he can't move. If he can't move, he can't land his Qs. If he can't land his Qs, he doesn't deal damage nor heal. Right? So Tenacity becomes massive for him. Even just slow resistance becomes massive for him. So this is almost every single time Tenacity. The times you would take attack speed are so absurdly rare, they're not even worth mentioning. Then for Coup de Grace, in the bottom row, you have three options in the bottom row. There's Coup de Grace, there is Cut Down, and there's Last Stand. Cut Down is when you're a squishy against a bunch of bruisers and tanks. It works. There are some characters that break this mold, like Senna. Senna versus squishies. She has enough or a low enough base life that it actually activates for her and becomes the best option. So, but normally you're looking for Coup de Grace and you're looking for Last Stand. Coup de Grace is if I can't get low, I am taking Coup de Grace. Or if I have an Execute in my kit. So AD carries generally take this because when they hit the threshold in which Last Stand beats out Coup de Grace, they're already dead. You kind of run into that issue, right? Then on the flip side, bruisers generally take Last Stand because they can afford to hit the threshold and be able to function. So real quick, let me pull this up for us. No. Don't want pentakill. There we go. So Last Stand is deal 5% increased damage whenever you're below 60% max life. For a bruiser to be below 60% max life, that is incredibly easy to be able to do. Right? Then on top of that, when you personally hit 30%, this damage output is increased to 11%. So the logic behind bruisers taking this is when you're fighting another bruiser and the fight is generally relatively equal, that damage output comes into play 20% before Coup de Grace does, and starts at 5%. By the time you hit 40% miss or 60% missing life, which is 40%, which is when Coup de Grace would normally come into play if you're both equal life, it's 9% instead of Coup de Grace 8%. So if the fight is equal, Last Stand is straight up better than Coup de Grace in every aspect. If you're winning the fight, Coup de Grace could potentially help you kill someone, but the problem is, bruisers overkill squishies, and are not killing another bruiser in one rotation. Generally, it takes multiple rotations to be able to do it, so Coup de Grace doesn't actually change what your lethal threshold is. If it takes 2 rotations to kill a target, whether you have Coup de Grace or not, it's going to take 2 rotations to kill your target. Last Stand then comes into play as well whenever you are losing and you get to pull it back. So if you have Last Stand and the opponent has coup de grace, you have a higher percent increase of damage than your opponent, even if you're in a losing state. So it allows you to attempt to turn the fight. With this as well, there are some champions that, excuse me, some bruisers, should I say, that are backloaded in their kits. So Aatrox has Q1, Q2, massive Q3, right? It's backloaded. So when it's backloaded, generally you've taken damage before you've gotten to the point where you've become massive. So in that context, by the time you get to the third Q where you want your damage to be the highest, it is the highest. Because Last Stand would have taken effect. If Last Stand has not taken effect yet, you're probably winning the fight so hard it doesn't matter what rune you have. Think about it that way. So bruisers take Last Stand. They do not take coup de grace unless they have an execute in their kit. So Akali is one that can justify coup de grace and Last Stand, but she actively does not get low because she has so many ways to be able to play around it, and she does have an execute in her kit with her ultimate. Things along the lines of that. Now for secondaries, we're running Second Wind and Revitalize. Second Wind, perfectly acceptable versus Gangplank. Problem: unless Gangplank plays this absolutely perfectly, you're supposed to be the abuser. Right? Aatrox wants to be the one actively setting the Gangplank behind, mercilessly attacking him, and Gangplank, generally up until first item, doesn't have a say in it unless Gangplank starts in lane and plays past the wave, because Aatrox's early game is actually relatively weak. A lot of people don't know that Aatrox's Q cooldown is 14 seconds level 1, and it's based off of the last Q he casted. So once you know that he has no ability to cast Q anymore, so either he Q3'd or he waited out the timer so he can't cast again, you have a very extended period of time to just bum rush him. And it's very hard for him to be able to fight. Once Aatrox gets some CDR and some levels, that's when he starts becoming a real menace. But people generally just kind of like let him Q and then exist, and that does not function. So Second Wind is okay, but generally you're looking towards conditioning. Right? And that's if you want this green tree. We'll touch on other options in a second. Revitalize works actually really, really well in Aatrox, but it works much, much later. And by the time you get to that later stage, if you're hitting, you're healing. You're already over-healing the opponent. Almost guaranteed. Either you're getting one shot or you're over-healing. That's how Aatrox works. So generally, Revitalize doesn't actually do anything for you. Right? Because the thing that actually stops Aatrox from functioning, like we previously talked about, is his inability to move. If you crowd control him, he is screwed. So he cares about tenacity significantly more than Revitalize. This would be unflinching. So versus a Gangplank Sivir, where you'd be taking quite a bit of physical damage from auto attacks, you can go tenacity here, and then you can pick up Ninja Tabby and you'll be okay. Or you can pick up CDR boots because he's dealing with quite a few ranged people, considering Gangplank doesn't even play melee most of the time. So CDR boots would also be quite a nice help. But either way, double tenacity allows you to not have to take Merc Treads versus all of this crowd control that you're forced to deal with as the Aatrox. I just realized when you're zoomed out, you can't click on people. So this should be conditioning and unflinching, and then this should be alacrity, this should be Last Stand. This is standard, this is standard. Okay. Gangplank on the flip side. Normal, bone plating is terrible. I explained that right at the start of last video when we were going over runes. Overgrowth is perfectly fine. Is anything better? No, there's nothing better than overgrowth here. Because unflinching doesn't actually change how he interacts with anyone, because knock up, slow, but it's more consistent. Consistent, slow. So then he has Futures Market and Time Warp Tonic. Time Warp Tonic is one of the worst runes in the entire game after all the nerfs. It doesn't actually do anything. Excuse me. It's basically like you heal 30% of the mana restored instantly, so it's great. It's supposed to be great versus burst fights, but 30% of an already nerfed potion is garbage. It doesn't actually do anything. You heal for 30 immediate. It will turn some fights, but it's so rare there are generally better options. Right? And then with Gangplank as well, in particular, he has a lot of components he can buy, where his perfect buy is, on first recall, is either 700 gold or you're looking 900 gold. One of these two. 700 gold is Sheen, 900 gold is double starter item. So this is where you're in an abusive matchup that you have to survive the early game, and if you survive through the early game, you are perfectly fine. So in this case, you would pick up probably like D-Blade and D-Shield, or like Call plus D-Blade, things along the lines of that. Because also you require 2 longswords in the early stage of the game to be able to last hit under tower cleanly. So when you go double starter item, you now have the ability last hit, whether it's D-Shield or not, because D-Shield adds bonus damage to minions. Corrupting Potion does not. So, off of that, generally Futures Market doesn't do anything for Gangplank. In a lot of matchups, he is the abuser where he gets to choose his own recalls, and in matchups where he's not the abuser, he has so many different options to be able to build, he's just fine. The only time Futures Market would actually change... Sorry, throat's a little dry. The only time Futures Market would actually change your recall is when you screwed something up in the laning phase. So it'd be a savior thing. But if you want a savior thing, then why don't we have Second Wind? Why don't we have Biscuits? Things along the lines of that. So the better secondaries in current state for me, for Gangplank in particular, could be Mana Flow plus Trance. You could go Mana Flow Gathering if you're playing for much, much later. You could go Boots Biscuits if you're looking for just, okay, I want the free boots. I already have the Resolve Tree, so I already have that as my option. And then Biscuits is just in case I screw up the laning phase. That can be acceptable. But it depends on what you're trying to accomplish. My favorite personally in current state is the Mana Flow plus Trance or Mana Flow and Gathering, based on situation. Because they've just nerfed everything in this tree so much. It's so hard to justify anything. It's insane. Excuse me. Outside of very, very specific scenarios. Also, I never touched on the Aatrox secondaries. So Aatrox secondaries have the ability to go Domination as well if he's playing for pure early game prowess. So he can go like Sudden Impact after the buffs plus Ulti Hunter or Relentless Hunter. He's running Eclipse, so he can go Ingenious Hunter as well because it reduces the cooldown of Eclipse. That's not bad, especially if he's going GA as like a third item. So you can go like Death Dance GA or Death Dance Maw to be able to do that. And similar concept to reduce the cooldown of Maw or Sterix, just based on what he's required to have. Excuse me. Does he have any other options? No. No, he doesn't. But yeah, normally Resolve Tree is the standard secondary. Don't need Second Wind in this matchup. It's not going to make a difference. Don't need Revitalize on Aatrox because Tenacity means infinitely more. Alright. Rek'Sai. Normal. Rek'Sai has an Execute in the ultimate. You can justify Coup de Grace because he is playing for a one-shot. He's not playing to get low. He's not playing to go for an equal fight. He's playing to say, die. Just straight up die. Coup de Grace is better on Rek'Sai for that reason. Then secondaries are Magical Footwork, Cosmic Insight. Okay. So, similar concept to what I talked about before. It's not bad, but the reason people take Cosmic Insight is for flash cooldowns or for the 7-minute invade on second buff. Which in this game does have some relevancy because we're looking to try to snowball the game very, very hard. And also Rek'Sai does like the flash knockup. It's not bad. We then always have to state, do I want this or do I want all the stats in gold at 12 minutes? And realistically, with having to snowball this game very, very hard, I think going Cosmic Insight, powering damage while you get your boots for free eventually, is perfectly fine. I think that's the better option in this game. You do also have the option to go into... Oh, no. There's a better option. We should not be going this. This should be Sudden Impact and Relentless Hunter, the movement speed one. That's infinitely better than this, because we're trying to snowball the early game out of control, so the lethality is very, very valuable, comparatively to the flash duration. The flash cooldown. Because by the time we're having to flash in every single fight, the game should have already been determined. So the bonus movement speed, walking around and trying to murk people, has more value. And then we don't have to power boots either in that regard because we have the out of combat movement speed. So that's correct. I also didn't look at this. Similar concept that I talked about before. No one should be running the armor rune. No one should be running the health. Or sorry, no one should be running the armor and magic resist rune. It should always be the health rune. Alright. Lilia. Normal. Sort of. So Lilia's a weird one. Where normally if she's killing a target, she's killing them over the course of a long period of time, and she's generally pretty healthy. Having said that, versus this kind of a team, this should be Tank Lilia. This should be the either Rift, probably just Rift Maker into Frozen Heart with then this Force of Nature. So if that's the context, then this should be Last Stand because we are going beefy Lilia, not the one-shot Lilia. It's not that the one-shot Lilia is bad if he gets hyper-accelerated, but it's a matter of like, okay, when we're looking at this team, if he doesn't get one-shot by Aatrox, he's fine. If he doesn't get one-shot by Rek'Sai, he's fine. Misfortune's not going to one-shot him through tank. It's fine. So Vlad is just going to be the annoying one, where Tank Lily doesn't have the ability to deal with that. But when it's damage top, damage mid, damage AD carry, are we really worried about damage output at that point? Probably not. And then secondaries, we have Boots Futures. What is Futures really doing? Probably nothing. Like, you can technically play for a full clear plus Skull Crab, and you can get Lost Chapter off of that with Futures Market. But realistically, do we care about Lost Chapter as a jungler? Probably not. And then also, realistically, this shouldn't be a Lost Chapter game. This should just be a Riftmaker game. So what would be better here? This would probably just be a Resolve tree for Tank Lilia. You're probably going to hear me talk about this a lot, where it's like the the Inspiration tree has been nerfed so many times that why would we ever justify that over top of just a massive income of just raw stats? And normally whenever you're looking at runes, like, yeah, a lot of the runes have utility, but in reality, the runes you're picking are the ones with raw power. When you actually boil it down to everything. The raw power runes and what's mathematically higher what's mathematically higher numerically? That's a dumb sentence. What's higher numerically, those are the ones you're going to take. So, for instance, if Biscuits have more sustain than Second Wind, and we want to survive the laning phase, we're taking Biscuits. It's raw health value. That's what we're actually getting out of that. If Second Wind is higher than Biscuits, we're taking Second Wind. Raw health value. Right? There are some champions that play for little bits of utility like Approach Velocity, but it's very, very specific to their kit. Not in general sense. So in this case, yeah, Lilia should 100% have Resolve Tree to be able to deal with this. And just survive the early game. Vlad. Standard. Boots Cosmic, relatively standard. Again, you always have the option to go Resolve Tree on Vladimir as well. He doesn't use Boots early, so it's okay to be able to take this rune. It's okay to be able to take up Cosmic Insight, especially when you are running double combat sums to reduce the cooldown of 2 relevant summoners comparatively to Ghost. Again, the whole talk of, like, is Ghost a combat summoner? Yes and no. But that's in the last video. Double AP, magic. There should be CDR, ability power, and then health. The reason it's CDR is Vlad cares about CDR above all else. Because the higher CDR, the more Qs, the more empowered Qs he gets, higher value. I think all Vlads take CDR. I could be wrong on that, because my information's a little outdated on Vlad. Really, why health? It's because at level 4 or 5 for every single champion in the entire game, the health rune has outscaled. It's that one-sided. It's insane. It's not even remotely close. Especially after durability update. It just gave more credence to the health rune. Because the health rune used to outscale by level 7 or 8 for every champion. Now it's 4 and 5. When you actually do the math. It's not close. Even in scenarios where you're in bot lane, for instance, where you're against 2 physical damage, pure physical damage people. All minions are dealing physical damage. There's no magic damage whatsoever coming at you. Literally 0. By level 4 in a burst scenario, the health rune outdoes it. It's actually that one-sided. And then when you take a normal laning phase and you go through all of it. So like from level 1 to generally like level 4 is when most people recall. Just depends on lane. Even if you use all of your potions, and in the scenario I used when I did the math, one of the players I was going with literally had double the base health regen of Lucian. We were using Lucian as the example. With double the health regen of Lucian and potions pre-nerfed at level 4, playing out a hyper-extended laning phase. Oh, sorry, it was the level 5. Hyper-extended laning phase. So Lucian had more health regen than he would ever standardly have. The armor rune beat out the health rune by 36. So when you take out all the bonus health regen and then you nerf the potions, which is all effective life, which gives more credence to armor, it's not close. And that's if we had a perfect scenario where it's a hyper extended laning phase. Second you recall the first time, all that argument becomes immediately gone, and the health rune immediately beats it out, even if potions were the spectacular thing, or a health regen was that high, actually. It's not close. Not close at all. So anyways. So Vladimir, everything's relatively standard. Does have the option to go Resolve Tree, but I think this is perfectly fine because he's running double combat summoners. If he was running TP, then we would see probably Resolve Tree here instead. Because also, Vlad probably wants to be able to flash in this fight. Because we do have a Veigar, so he's going to have to flash the cage pretty frequently. Veigar! These runes are very, very bad. I'm going to touch on why. So generally for Veigar, he is overkilling his targets by a lot. It's not even remotely close. So Electrocute Veigar is acceptable in bot lane because you have to fight frequently for a prio. And because it's 2v2, you're generally splitting your damage between multiple targets. In mid lane, you don't have that problem. Then, especially when we go into a Vladimir, neither side has the capability to kill each other, whether there's Ignite or no Ignite. Right? So with this tree becomes inherently just wrong. It doesn't do anything. So the best rune to be able to pick up... Oh, also, side note. Because Vhagar outranges every single champion on this team besides Misfortune ult, this can, like, if your argument is damage output, this should just be First Strike. First Strike will outdo Electrocute incredibly hard come mid-game. And again, you're not killing people early game, doesn't serve a purpose. So First Strike would be better here. You're always getting it off, 100% of the time. So, with this, the best rune for Vhagar, hands down, is Unsealed Spellbook. Because if you're already heavily overkilling your targets, all you care about is survival. Which is also why the Vhagar build becomes basically pure tank once you get to like 3rd, 4th item in his build. Because he doesn't care about damage output anymore. He's fine. Right? So normal runes are Unsealed Spellbook, Boots. You can go between Futures and Biscuits as need be. Generally, you're looking Futures. I'll explain why in a second. And then the bottom row, you're looking CDR because none of the other 3 have any relevancy. Then for your secondaries, generally you're looking Mana Flow Ban plus Gathering. The reason for Gathering is you're playing for late game on Vhagar. You do have the option for Transcendence as need be. You can also swap both of these up for Resolve Tree and just state, I want to survive this lane. So you're against a Zed or you're against a Xerath, something super pokey. Just pick up Second Wind plus Overgrowth. Be tank Vhagar. That's fine. Vhagar overkills targets anyways. Just survive. Perfectly acceptable thought process. But it's based on matchup. So versus this Vladimir, we just want as much scaling as possible because we should never be dying to anyone. It just shouldn't be happening. There's no way that a Zilean is going to walk mid and cause us issues. There's no way that a Rek'Sai should be able to cause us issues pre-Prowler's Claw. And, excuse me, by Prowler's Claw, Vhagar should already have Everfrost. So that doesn't matter. He's completely irrelevant. There's no way that Vlad solo kills. There's no way that Aatrox gets on. Vhagar is the pinnacle of this composition. There's no one that can do anything to him. Just doesn't exist. So then for secondaries, we have Mana Flow Trance, which, again, is fine. It's not bad. It's just Gathering becomes better than Transcendence as the game progresses, generally by 20 minutes. And then if you are building Death Cap on Vhagar, it just amplifies it more. So that's fine. Alrighty. Misfortune. Go Comet, Mana Flow, Trance, Gathering, Cheap Shot, Treasure Hunter. Okay, so this is kind of fascinating, where in the last one we talked about how everything wants to kind of work or like mesh with each other thematically. So we have early game, early to mid game, late game, we're talking 20 plus minutes, early game, early game. So if we're going, I just did the thing, oops. If we're going Gathering Storm, plus the Comet, plus early game, that doesn't make any sense. Right? If you want to play for late game Misfortune, there are better options. Much, much better options. Right. So then this right here should be Scorch if we're running this regard. Because Scorch actually gives us the early game prowess that we're looking for, and it can change your lethals potentially. Realistically versus Nami, will it? No, because also this doesn't make sense. Sort of. I'll touch on that in a second when we get to bot lane. Actually, no, I should do it now. So realistically, when we're looking at this kind of a composition, if you want to play for just E spam, that's a potential that can work. But I believe Misfortune E just got nerfed, right? Yeah, so this was after the nerf that came in. So E spam Misfortune is basically just dead in the water. It sucks. It doesn't do anything, right? But we are looking at mid-range, short-range, mid-range, short-range, mid-range. You're going to be able to actually hit these targets. Because you're going to be able to hit these targets, you should generally be going lethality build this game. Or if you want to go Gale Force Crit, you could go Gale Force Crit, because we don't have anyone on our team who can cleanly take objectives as the game progresses. So you could state, I need to be a DPS source, not a burst source, to be able to do that. And that's viable. So if we were going for the Gale Force Misfortune to be able to get on people, we would look PTA. And then we would go full crit off that. If we're looking for lethality build, can you go Comet? Yes, and then you would still go the Scorch. All this early game stuff makes relative sense. Cheap Shot? Yeah, Cheap Shot makes sense. I had to think about that for a second. Just more damage. So you could go lethality with this build, but is there a better option? Garbage first try. I guess with the new Q, you might be going PTA even in lethality, because you can auto Q auto so quickly, it's insane. But then you lose laning phase prowess. I guess you're half sacking the laning phase anyways because you have Zilean. Let me think on that. This is what's really nice about looking back at this stuff too, is like we can have a base idea of what's supposed to be happening. And again, champion pools were horrible for this entire tryouts. So things are naturally a little off comparatively. So like this could be a Nautilus, this could be a Leona, something with more oomph, but we don't play those. So then we start running into that issue. So then do these runes then make sense for the current context of what has been created? And are they the best option? I'm trying to go through the math in my head as well. I think I would probably swap. What gives more value, Treasure Hunter or Eyeball? Does anyone have Eyeball, actually? Yes, perfect. How much AD does this give? Okay, so kill is collect 1 eyeball per champion takedown. 1.2 AD is worth approximately 35 gold. Some bounty or treasure hunter would give more value than eyeball collector up until you've already completed it. Okay, so then yeah, this would be Scorch. Everything else here makes sense. You could potentially swap up Transcendence for absolute focus, but that's a little rough versus a Sivir, especially when you have a Zilean in lane. So I think that's fine. I think this is fine. We would just swap this to Scorch. So then Sivir. Normal, 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 normal. This should be swapped to Resolve Tree. Because again, as long as you survive the initial burst on Sivir, similar concept to like Lilia, you just win. You're fine. So if this becomes like Conditioning Overgrowth, and you just magically have 400 more effective life or 500 more effective life, it's so much harder to kill you. You could also take Second Wind to be able to deal with the E-Spam from Misfortune as need be, but probably Conditioning Overgrowth would be your best options. Oh, Unflinching is also not bad because consistent slow, slow. Oh, it might be Unflinching, actually. Yeah, it should be Unflinching conditioning on Sivir. Especially for not taking Ghost. Good. Zilean, we have Airy, Mana Flow. This should always be Transcendence 100% of the time. Celerity is the worst rune in the entire game and it should never be taken. It's just, by math, it's that bad. And then Water Walking is perfectly acceptable if you are roaming a lot. If you are not roaming a lot, it is then better to be able to take Gathering Storm, because also Water Walking gives you attack damage and ability power based on your level, but you're a support who doesn't get levels. So you as a support are not actually taking this for power, you're taking this for movement speed. Is my music still going? I just realized that is super quiet. Oh, it's Teamfight Tactics music. No. Still Teamfight Tactics music. No. It's not in shuffle, that's why. There we go. Much better. Once it pops on. Turn that up a little bit. Alright. So. Realistic. Too loud. Want it to be nice little background music, not overshadowing. Alright. So, on Zilean, realistically, if you're looking for actual power, you'd be picking up Gathering Storm. Then on top of that as well, how often are you going to be roaming as an enchanter? Probably not that much, right? There's a reason they power their mythic comparatively. So Water Walking doesn't actually serve any purpose for the Zilean over top of Scorch or Gathering. Scorch for early game, Gathering for late game. If you're playing Zilean, why are we playing for early game? Go the Scorch. Secondaries, Boots, okay on Enchanter, but generally there's better options. I'll touch on that in a second. And Approach Velocity makes absolutely no sense because if you E them, you're catching them anyways because you're already very, very close to them. Excuse me. Similar concept, if you stun someone, you already have gas anyways. If you want to auto-attack them to death, you've already won the fight and you're already next to them. Why does this matter? This does not make any sense on Zilean. So, the better secondaries generally on Zilean are Zombie Ward. Zombie Ward's fantastic for support. You're constantly sweeping out wards. It gives you some ability power, which Zilean cares a lot about when you start looking at his ratios. 90% on Q, so 180 on combo. And his ultimate is 200%. And then you can go Ulti Hunter. So Ulti Hunter plus Zombie Ward generally are your standard two. You can go Ingenious Hunter given situations. But Ulti Hunter, Eyeball, Jesus. Ulti Hunter and Zombie Ward are generally your two standard. Very, very standard. If there are Zilean one-tricks running this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make sense in sports unless you're roaming. He's not roaming. This is just, you can pull out a calculator and realize this doesn't work. So if those Zilean one-trick is doing it, doesn't make sense. Boots make sense on an enchanter, but there are better options. And then approach velocity doesn't do anything for him. Alrighty. And then ability haste, armor, similar concept. This should be ability haste, adaptive health. Unless you absolutely require resistances. But generally you don't on Zilean. Generally you require a little bit more oomph to try to get through the laning phase. Because bombs hurting more is very, very nice because your AP ratios are so high. The Nami, standard. You can potentially go Gathering Storm on her. Gathering Storm is perfectly fine, but if we're playing to try to abuse a laning phase, especially with a Zilean in the mix, you're not outscaling the Zilean. Taking Scorch makes a lot of sense. Same concept in the last video. Bone Plating is atrocious. It's one of the worst runes in the entire game as well when you actually look at it. And Revitalize is standard. So when you're looking at Misfortune is going to E-spam, swap this up to Second Wind. You're in a really, really good spot now. Alright. So, realistically looking at where the junglers want to path towards, Rek'Sai wants to be able to path topside because Aatrox can completely demolish this game. These two should be relatively safe and standard, just existing, and they'll need help every once in a while to be able to get themselves bailed out. And on the flip side, Lilia wants to be able to path top here too, even though Lilia is supposed to want to path bot. The reason for this is summoner spell choice. Gangplank is a champion where he wants to play around his barrel range. He does not want to play around Ignite range. Ignite is basically a purely laning phase rune. So unless this Gangplank is not leashing, starting the lane all the way up here, zoning the Aatrox completely off of the wave, starting from level 1, this Ignite is completely worthless compared to TP. Because now all of a sudden you make one mistake on Gangplank, you die a singular time, especially to a Rek'Sai, where their early game power is so much higher than yours. You're just out of the game if they play it halfway decently. You just start dying on repeat and getting tower dove solo by Aatrox, and then if Lilia shows up, he kills both of you. That's how strong Aatrox can become if he snowballs, and this allows him to snowball out of control, unless you play it hyper-aggressive. But again, if you're playing hyper-aggressive with the Rek'Sai pathing top, we run into an issue. What is this happy music? Riot Creator Playlist, stop. Daffodil, no. Galaxy Slayer Z, much better. Much, much better. Alrighty. So, itemization, standard. Touch on that in a second. That's a little questionable. That can be a little questionable. That is very questionable. So, what we're looking at here is the similar concept with the Vladimir as to the last one, with the Dark Seal comparatively to like D-Shield or anything. Because he has Dark Seal, he can absolutely be poked out of lane and start taking bad resets, and especially when you're taking basically pure combat, you're not killing the Veigar. It's not happening. Not unless he makes massive mistakes. Right? So why do we need Dark Seal in first reset comparatively to being able to survive the lane phase? Because your entire purpose in life generally is to scale as Vladimir. Doesn't make logical sense. On the flip side, after the E nerf to Misfortune, you can't just max it and spam it out. It doesn't do nearly as much anymore. So starting tier to be able to cause that doesn't make sense. We're also looking for as much early game prowess as possible, so by the time Merman actually transforms, everybody else on or these two on your team are falling off the face of the planet. So we want to spike as early as possible, not at Merman spike. Merman can function on Misfortune during the lethality builds, but it's a little more questionable. Then also one additional thing, if you want to spam out E versus these two without Scorch, Nami's healing is probably going to be enough to be able to deal with it. Plus, Sivir can always outshove you to be able to reset whenever they want because you have a Zilean on your team. So this doesn't make sense either. The Veigar running tier. Well, let me phrase this. Seraph's Embrace is one of the worst items in the entire game. When you look at what it actually gives you, it gives you mana, garbage ability power, garbage ability haste. If you wanted damage output, you could pick up any other item. If you want ability haste, you could pick up so many other items. The only reason to actually pick up Seraph's Embrace is if you require the mana. Veigar versus Vladimir does not require the mana. We can also go one step further with this. Because we have futures, we're supposed to have futures market on Veigar, because generally he wants to run that, you would generally start Sapphire Crystal. Sapphire Crystal is 250 mana. Tier is 240. Then when you go through the actual laning phase or first rotation and see how much mana this actually gives you, generally it's going to be about 50. So you're looking at 290 mana to 250 mana. Then you get corrupting or refillable potion start to normal pot start. Now, when you play out 6 waves of the game, I believe it's 6, could be 5 or 6. I have to recheck my math. I didn't recheck my math from the last time. Excuse me. When you start with the Sapphire Crystal, you can then recall and pick up Lost Chapter. So now all of a sudden, starting from wave 6 at worst case scenario, you have Lost Chapter plus Refillable Potion. Why do you have mana issues for the rest of the game if you have Lost Chapter? So why do we need Tear in this case? Doesn't make sense. There are better options, especially versus Vladimir, who's not going to abuse you. Vladimir's not going to just magically say, I kill you pre-6. It just doesn't exist. So especially when you're only playing out the first 6 waves of the game, you have teleport advantage. You can choose when you recall. Tear doesn't do anything. Excuse me. What else? This should be Blue Smite. Realistically, it's Blue Smite because as long as you slow this or you slow this, you're walking away from it anyways, and you're choosing your own fights on Lilia. You're not actually taking extended fights with anything here. D-Blade is bad because these two are poke, so you would want Longsword with the additional potions. Talked about that in the last video. Right at the beginning, when I'm talking about itemization, you'll find like 6,400 or like me pulling a calculator up on screen. That's the moment. Everything else is pretty normal. Okay. So now I finally get into the game. So first off, point defense. Let's see what it looks like. So realistically, we're looking... Why are you so late out? So let's look at blue sides first. So the blue side point defense, we are incredibly late out the gate. Why are we incredibly late out the gate? Did we just not buy items? No, you're running around. So late. Only one person leaves base on time in a tryout. And we go straight to turret. Okay, that's incorrect. Here is correct. Where does Vladimir go to? Vladimir now points to his spot, but he walked around here for a while doing absolutely nothing. So that's super late. Already could be around the corner. Ah, because you're standing still. That's why. Thomas runs straight into this bush and stands still and then loops around. So they could have already been around this corner and right here and behind you. So you're dead. You should be dead. And then Raj is currently in this bush over top of being outside the bush. So notice how there's this dead space, right? They can be right here, and the second you'll see them is the second they turn this corner. By the time they turn that corner, you are already dead. So we have one person doing point defense correctly on this side. Then we walk forward, get a ward. Ward is fine. Reset. All of that's fine. One person has done this correctly, and then we're constantly walking back and forth, even though our job is in mid lane is just to make sure that they can't enter in through this way. So, quick point defense, because I already talked about this in the last one. For blue side, support here, or sorry, AD carry here, generally, unless you're afraid of an invade. Support here, mid here, jungle here, top laner out here. That way, they have no ability to get in without multiple dashes. So, like, there's a famous clip of G2 versus Gen G, where they were... blue side with Rakan, and Rakan W'd here, waited for cooldown, and then W'd in this bush, and they knew someone was going to be there. On the flip side, for red side is generally AD carry, support, mid, jungle, top lane is out in here, out in the river. Similar concept to support down here. If they sit in this bush, they can just die. Dead spot. So, backing it up, let's see red side leaving base. Who goes to the correct spot? All right. Super late. So only one person on this side compared to the 4 on the opposite. Court is going to the complete other wrong side of the map unless an invade is called. This is a tryout. I will remember all of this because how you act in a tryout should be the most professional you ever are. So when I see this in chat, it's my chat button. I can just pull it up this way. So when I see this in chat, who started this? Oh, my button for chat doesn't work for this. What's my key button for chat for this? Should be interface. Scoreboard, character menu tab, chat history. Should be N, right? Pretty sure it's N. Who started this? So Thomas started this, followed by Homing Squid. This is fine. Okay. By the way, it's showing multiple things because of Spectate Client. That's Spectate bug. All of this gets remembered. But always the top one is going to be the first one. So. Very late. Court's finally getting to a spot. Super late. Master needs to be in the river, but you can't go in the river because they can just be waiting right here and then just kill. So he's not allowed to be in his spot because Homing Squid's not allowed in this spot. So now the Homing Squid in his spot, he should be able to walk forward, but he doesn't see it. Court never actually defends his spot whatsoever. So if he defended his spot, that should have been a forced off Rek'Sai. This ward should never exist, or it could have been swept very, very easily. Whenever you recall, you should also be swapping the sweeper. And then Derek Jeter is not out in the river. So over all of this, we've had one person go to point defense correctly. No, two. Quirtle and Rek'Sai. Only ones to do point defense correctly. Wow, that's super buggy. There he is. All right. Interesting. Okay. Again, something to be able to remember. Because point defense is super, super valuable because, especially in lower elos, people like to just invade all the time. Oh, N is... I have found the problem of why it's not N. That's why it's not N. Does M do anything? M does nothing. Okay. Perfect. Wonderful. Okay. Point defense is super, super important in lower elos because realistically, one, if you showcase you know it, then you're showing me you actually looked up something at some point in time. Right? You're not just playing the game to play the game. You're not just going off of your current knowledge. Because if you are going off of your current knowledge and you're 300 games silver, your knowledge is probably not correct. That just becomes kind of the reality. So whenever I see someone go to point defense correctly, it means either A, it's just like got ingrained into their muscle memory, or B, they looked up something. Fantastic. So now we get to look at top lane. So I'm going to go over this much, much faster than the previous game because realistically, again, two things. One, already talked about a lot of stuff, so if I reference something, I'm just going to say, hey, talked about it in the last video. You can look up for the full explanation, and I'm giving the short explanation here. And also B, there's going to be so many mistakes in this game that it would take way too long to be able to go over it. Because to put into perspective, last game, again, I said about half of what I wanted to. Only got 16 minutes in game. Took 5.5 hours for a high plat, low diamond game. This is going to be many, many more mistakes. So, let's start this off. So already we have, again, Ignite instead of TP, so we run to the issue. We're not actually playing forward whatsoever. And both sides have shown exactly where jungler is going to be starting, so neither side faked it. Alright, and realistically, excuse me, both sides really, really want power. So this is fine. Starting here is fine. Okay, so we've already kind of found one major problem here. Let's speed this, or let's go back here. So whenever Gangplank is actively trying to play out the laning phase, there are two ways to be able to think about playing it out, right? One is you're playing for your passive, the other is playing for your pistol shot. If you're playing for your pistol shot, you generally want to play in top pockets, top pocket, mid pocket, bot pocket. Explain the last one. You generally want to play in top pockets so you can take the pistol shot and then immediately walk into the bush to be able to reset mini aggro. If the opponent is playing farther back, then you take bot pocket because it's a shorter distance to be able to run so you can actually get the pistol shot off. If you have your passive up, and he's playing too far back. Instead, you still want to play top pocket, auto attack a minion for your passive to get the bonus movement speed, then chase them down. That's also why Gangplank used to run Time Warp Tonic, but doesn't anymore because it used to be 4% movement speed or 5% movement speed, something like that, and they nerfed it. It used to be 50% of potion instantly. Got rid of that. So it just becomes a really, really bad run. So now when we walk up and we auto attack one minion, we're basically stating we're playing for the grass proc with our Q. Okay, so if that's the case, we're in the wrong pocket. Now also as well, once Gangplank burns this auto attack, Aatrox should want to go trade, realistically. Why is it? Okay. It showed Vlad when I clicked for some reason. That was weird. Aatrox should want to go trade here. And the reasoning for that is with this passive down, Gangplank normally has two abilities at level 1. The passive plus the Q, which is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting if he chooses to fight you. But one of those two is down, and now he's going to pistol shot you regardless here in a second. So take the fight now, start your cooldown rotation early, and force him back. So it becomes pistol shot into he leaves. He can't just decide to all-in you for queuing anymore. So that gives you wave control. When you have wave control, you can go up 1 to 2 minions. Generally, you want 2 in this case because Gangplank's going to keep pistol shotting you, so you can't just stay up here and auto-attack the entire time. And very long cooldowns in Aatrox. So that way, you can attempt to hit level 2 first. If you hit level 2 first, you can then all-in into Gangplank, zone him all the way off, and your health becomes half irrelevant. Reason it's half irrelevant is Gangplank, even if he uses all of his corrupting potions and spams out Q on a target, they will not die. He requires to use barrels, he requires to use passives to be able to actually kill someone in the first rotation of play. So, your health becomes half irrelevant because then you get to be able to push the waves, choose when they crash, you can then 3-wave recall or 3-wave dive because you have a Rek'Sai coming up, and then the Gangplank has no ability to play the game anymore. Will Lilia be able to match that? No. No, she won't. Because if Lily decides to 3-camp and go top, which she should to be able to defend that gank, Lily is so weak in the early game, and Gangplank should already be on the heavy back foot by that point, that there's no way to play it out versus Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai chooses which target gets knocked up. Between Aatrox and Rek'Sai, the target dies. But we're just kind of accepting things, right? And because we're just kind of accepting things, this is the same problem as in the last game, right? So, for instance, once Gangplank Q's here, I guarantee you Aatrox doesn't just bum rush the Gangplank. Yeah, we're playing so far back, we're not even touching the minions, we're just relaxing. We haven't even hit a minion a single time, but yet we're down a minion right now. And you always, if you want to have lane state advantage, especially, excuse me, like bruisers want lane state advantage, juggernauts want lane state advantage, because then they can actually trade. You're just giving it up here. So if you're stating, I'm not going to hit these minions, I'm going to let Gangplank tank the minions and have it push into me. Some cases, that's okay. As an Aatrox, that is not okay. Because he's even in your Q range multiple times. Okay, and now we're just doing 3 Qs at the same time. So this becomes a click issue. So realistically, when Gangplank walks forward here, this should be your immediate Q. It also hits the wave, so you can attempt to fix the wave. Because again, you're down quite a few minions at Aatrox right now. Right? So then finally, we Q, but it's already just way too late. So then Gangplank realistically also is trying to all-in you right here, with passive coming up here in a second, and Ignite. So we try to space it out. We missed the Q. This is just a click issue. If he's clicking backwards, you should be clicking forwards, be able to compensate for it. This is just keep your mouse cursor close to your character model to be able to move very, very quickly. Because you should be able to land that if he goes point blank. Or Gangplank stays point blank, and then Q3 is guaranteed. Then when Q3 comes out, right, we're just bum rushing him, and we see the animation right here. This has to be a backstep. Then you can choose to pursue him afterwards. Because as long as you have this passive up, he's not going to be able to fight you. So this becomes poor clicks on both sides. Excuse me. So now Gangplank has a massive minion lead, right? Aatrox's Q is down for 14 seconds, probably like 12 from now. 10, okay, close. Spectate things for speeding up and slowing down. Gangplank should be just playing past these minions so that Aatrox can't even play the game. And every time a minion's about to die, he should just bum rush the Aatrox up until that Q's about to be off cooldown. Because that way he can start denying experience. Especially when the Aatrox is played this scared, he's not going to do it. So the fact that we're allowing him to get this just as free, no. He shouldn't be allowed anywhere near this. But we're playing so passively. So Gangplank's entire thought process here is I'm just going to Q you to death, and if I have passive, I can bum rush you. You have to be doing more than that by a significant margin, because then all of a sudden, here's the best way to describe it. Everybody's rank is determined by 2 things. It's determined by how many mistakes you make. If you're a 3 farmer minute 80 carry, you will never function kind of thing. And also how many mistakes you let through. So the fact that Gangplank wasn't destroyed by the Aatrox for burning his passive, walking up and queuing him, is inherently a problem. The Aatrox just let it fly. Then similar concept. When Gangplank was in Q range multiple times, we could have had 2 to 3 rotations of our Q by this point. And we just haven't. We've gone through 1. That's how little the fighting is occurring, even though Gangplank's constantly in threat range of being hit by that, right? Or you could fix the wave with it. You have so many options to be able to deal with it, right? Then Gangplank ends up getting hit by Q3, which serves, like, we could have just backstepped, right? Excuse me. So then all of a sudden, now it's an equal trade, even though it had no right being even remotely close to equal. Then we don't zone off Aatrox, so now we're just literally still on equal playing field. Throughout everything that's occurred, the only thing that's happened is Gangplank has lost mana and we have equal life. Aatrox so far is winning. That's a bad Q. That's a bad Q. Okay. So now we start getting into the interesting things of why I'm saying this is a bad Q, right? So notice how we're down in minions very, very heavily, right? Our goal is still to be able to hit level 2 as fast as possible. Gangplank needs either this minion to die and this minion to die, or just this minion to die. Because it can be either 6 minions plus melee of first wave, or second wave, sorry, or 5 minions plus melee of second wave. Either one works because melees give more experience than casters. This is how solo lane levels up to 2, right? So Aatrox can go finish this off, bum rush a melee, and try to hit level 2 as fast as possible. Should that be a reality? No, that shouldn't be a reality. Gangplank should want to play up here. Wants to be able to try to hit level 2 as fast as possible, because first one to hit 2 should push the other all the way back to turret. The opponent should not be able to play the game from that point forward. Gangplank also should be popping Corruptings when we're looking to fight. So the fact that Aatrox is playing this so scared now that he has Q up, this Q1 is bad because they had no chance of hitting Gangplank. It wasn't even close. Q2 is bad because realistically we don't want to hit Gangplank anymore. We just want to play for a wave because already we missed the first one. And there's no way in hell we're going to be able to function if he hits 2 first. Doesn't matter this damage output. Q3 is fine but needs to be in the middle here so you hit as many minions as possible because you're trying to spam 2. Now, similar concept. Gangplank's very, very low mana, has Q'd, and the second he Qs, he's full backing away instead of spacing. So if the Q circle is here plus this, that's a bad circle. Gangplank wants to stand right here to be able to re-engage the second that Q is down. But we're spacing really too far away, so we can't punish any mistakes. Then also we haven't popped our Corrupting, even though we're under half life and a quarter mana. Hold on 1 second. Alright, I have a very untrimmed mustache, and mustache hair was getting in my nose, and that was not pleasant and very itchy. So, with that, right, all the mistakes being made by both sides just straight up aren't being punished whatsoever. Everything's just kind of existing. If I put Vayne in both, if I put any ranged character in both of your hands, you probably would have 3 auto attacks this entire laning phase so far on the opponent. Even if it's range versus melee. And now, similar concept, once we Q fully, right, Gangplank has no Q, we're fully aware of that. We don't have to walk from here to here because we're afraid of a Gangplank Q that doesn't exist. Cooldowns, no cooldowns thing. There we go. And then when Gangplank hits 2, Gangplank should be running him all the way back to turret so he gets 0 experience. Place a barrel up here, zone him all the way off, make his life hard. And then either way, at the worst of the worst case scenario, we should still be having a barrel. So on Gangplank in particular, there's something I love to teach people called the safety barrel, which is you place a barrel right next to you. If someone decides to all in you, you just pop the barrel and then you get to choose whether you fight with passive or you run away with the bonus movement speed because you popped your barrel, right? It's very, very hard for bruisers to actually get in on you at that point. And then also, if your barrel is here, your threat range is out to here. Well, that's middle of barrel. Your threat range is out to here with second barrel-ish. So off of that, right, you get to punish that very, very heavily. But you need a barrel on the map before they're afraid of it. Because if you place a barrel in the middle of a fight and you have to auto-attack that barrel to be able to get it going, they're going to be auto-attacking you during that time. And if you decide to state, okay, I'm going to auto-attack the barrel to bring it to 2, right, they auto-attack you. I'm going to auto-attack the barrel to bring it to 1, they auto-attack the barrel. Now you've wasted 2 auto-attacks. Excuse me. It becomes really, really hard. Next thing, barrel placement. Very, very massive. Barrels realistically should be placed on either side of the lane. They should not be placed in the middle unless your goal is to be able to push. Because you can never use this as a safety barrel without impacting the wave. It's just not an option. And you don't want to just push the wave constantly because that's how you suicide on repeat. That's what we talked about yesterday too with wave state manipulation. Right? Then also you want to, if this is a safety barrel, you want to place it where you are playing. So again, you should be all the way up here. There is no reason to be back here, right? So if you want to place it so that you have the wave clear, the barrel should be here at the bare minimum, because then you can always take 2 steps back, Q this minion, and keep the pressure up constantly, right? If you want it as an aggressive barrel, barrel should be here or here. Excuse me. Because notice how little this barrel is actually doing. By the time now that everything has come and gone, Aatrox can Q you for free, and because the safety barrel isn't up here, it should be right here, that's where I placed it last time, you have no ability to interact with him. So now we just burned all 3 of our barrels in the early game for 80 damage. No, that doesn't serve any purpose. So now similar concept, can't use this as a safety barrel without screwing up the entire wave. And we've just gone melee range. Okay. Alright, we gotta talk about clicks. Because clicks are everything here. Both mechanics are really, really poor on both sides. Alright, let's back this up a little bit. So first off, if we're this low on life and this low on mana, we have 2 corrupting potion stacks, something's going inherently wrong. Because we want to pop these whenever we're queuing as well. So before you pop this should be a corrupting potion stack to be able to deal the bonus damage. You're going to get the full healing of the potion anyways, the full mana of the potion anyways. Use it. Similar concept. When you decide to queue here in a second, potion should already be ticking. Why don't we have potion going? New concept, right? Notice how you're out of barrel, so you can't actually abuse him. You're queuing and then you're running away. If you used 1 barrel forwards, attacked with a second barrel, you still have 2 barrels left. New barrel here. Now Aatrox can't walk past this spot without being barreled. But we're using all of our barrels just randomly. We're trying to make a fancy chain instead of do something useful with it. Because there's just better ways to use it. Similar concept again. The second this is here, we have firmly stated we are just shoving the wave. So Aatrox Q1 is fine. Aatrox should dash backwards here so he doesn't take the barrel, because realistically, mana and resources, no mana. So there's no reason to get hit by that barrel there whatsoever. This is Q2. There's no reason to miss the Q2 if we're still holding on to dash, so it should be a dash backwards into it. Absolutely no reason to miss that. And I believe that did 0 damage too. Like it was just full dodged, even though it should be sweet spot. Let me just double check on that. 12, 13. Yep, oh no, it just did 30 damage. And then now we're Q3ing, but in reality, Aatrox, remember, is ability, auto, ability, auto, ability, auto. So because we never used our dash, we ended up missing out on Sweet Spot. We got hit by a barrel. Okay, let's go one step further, right? So your E on Aatrox is also an auto attack reset. So after Q2, if you want to auto dash auto Q3, that forces Gangplank Flash or he dies. Because if you notice, that's actually really close. Because he can get one more auto attack off on that. Even without that dash, he got one additional auto attack off. So because you're missing a Sweet Spot or two, oh, you're missing an auto attack by default because you autoed, or you didn't auto before Q3. You're missing another auto attack if you want to use dash here. You're missing about 140 life. No, less than that, less than that. Should be like 90 life because of barrel. You're missing 90 life because you got hit by the barrel where you could have just succeeded. Then you dashed for no auto attack reset when it could have been a dash for an auto attack reset. All of those different ways cause Gangplank to die here because Gangplank also hasn't orange yet and has not popped potions. The fact that you haven't popped potions or orange is a miracle you're still alive. So both sides played that really, really poorly, and it just happened to work out. There were so many ways for both sides to be able to win. So for Gangplank, it's the barrel usage in particular. And then also dodging Q3, because also that was a missed auto attack from Gangplank. I believe, yeah, Q is still up too. So Q could have been done much, much earlier. Oranges could have been done much, much earlier. Potions could have been done much, much earlier. But because we ignored everything about Gangplank, and like, excuse me, what resources you fully had, because right here, all you have to do is backstep here, or keep walking this way, and Aatrox has nowhere to go. And then after the auto attack, you can Q as well, if you already dodged the Q2. Because the bonus movement speed from your passive means basically Aatrox is forced to flash to be able to land it, or dash for it, which again, you can always flash on Gangplank. You can flash towards his turret and make his life impossible when you ward this push. There's so many ways for both sides to be able to win. And the fun fact about this is if Gangplank played this better, no Ignite was needed. If Aatrox played this better, Gangplank died through Ignite. Ignite actually didn't change the lethal unless both sides made massive mistakes the entire laning phase. That's just a fun fact on that. So also, I'm assuming neither side has played around the jungler yet as well, because that fight was really spooky. In the last video, I talked about farming junglers come online at 3:15. So that's generally when they 5 to 6 camp. Hopefully 6 camp if they're good enough. There are junglers that break this rule, because again, everything I state is, the game is fluid. It changes constantly, and there are so many champions in this game, I can't give a blanket statement and say that's 100% correct. It's not. No statement I ever say is 100% correct. Unless we're looking at a very, very specific circumstance. So like in the Aatrox versus GP one, we can see all the ways to be able to win that. That's a specific circumstance. But the whole, like, farming junglers come online at 3:15. Now this changes constantly. Ganking junglers generally come online at 2:30 because they 3-camp. The fact that our Rek'Sai is full clearing currently is a massive red flag if they do not play Rek'Sai. So let's look at where 2:30 was. So it's when wave 3 is coming in. So this is when Rek'Sai is supposed to be top lane, to put into perspective. Okay. And the reason I know that no one's playing around junglers is we just used 3 barrels with the jungler supposed to be sitting right here who can now go all the way in. This should be a dead Gangplank because Rek'Sai tunnels here. Gangplank is forced to flash when he gets to about here to be able to escape. Rek'Sai follow flashes. Aatrox has dashes and flash as well. Gangplank is dead. This is also why Lilia has to 3-camp here. Because if Lilia does not 3-camp, then this gank is guaranteed. So the argument then becomes as well, did Aatrox have the wave push into him intentionally to have Rek'Sai come up? Nope. Rek'Sai's right there. That's not an argument. Did Aatrox have the ability to be able to 3-wave crash and then be able to get a resell off if the jungler is going to be late? Yes. Did the Aatrox have the ability to 3-wave crash for Rek'Sai to be able to dive level 3? Yes. We have all these options, but no one's playing around each other. Everybody's just kind of in their own isolated world. And in the isolated world, there's so many mistakes that it's basically just a coin flip which side wins. Because now all of a sudden, this is also the problem with having no TP and Ignite. This wave is frozen. This wave is frozen. So in order to be able to freeze, I talked about last time, you need 2 additional caster minions here, 3 here, 4 here. For all intents and purposes. About those lines. They're approximate lines. Right? So we should thin this out to 4 additional caster minions and just hold it. And now all of a sudden, Gangplank is in a bad spot. But when you hit every single minion in existence, we don't actually know what freezing is or what its purpose is. So the reason that Aatrox walked in that bush then is to reset mini aggro. If his argument is to freeze, that's not an argument. He broke the freeze already. It's already gone instantaneously. So now Gangplank should be walking into a spot where Rek'Sai should have the ability to be top, because Rek'Sai, realistically, if she did full clear, would have been at Skull Crab, and now has nothing to do because no camps have respawned yet and is topside with a freeze. So Rek'Sai should be waiting for the Gangplank right here. But she's not. Aatrox broke the freeze, so there's no reason Gangplank has to play forward, because if the minion wave is pushing this way, Gangplank can just chill, play for experience range, and be fine. Because fun fact, experience range is 1600, so it is exactly the same as a Varus fully charged Q. That's experience range in the game. So from this minion, you have approximately to about here to stand, and you still get experience. That's pretty safe. Also, what music is this? That's like the 4th time I've had to say that. Oh, it's Pentakill. Okay. All right. So off of this now, we're burning up additional barrels that we don't need to. We're constantly pushing the wave. We're basically stating we're going to stay at this state the entire time. And the worst spot to be in League of Legends is on your opponent's third of the map, because they can always take 2 steps back and be perfectly safe, and you can never pursue them. But you also have the longest to be able to run to safety. So the second someone recognizes you're all the way up here constantly, you should just be dying. Especially with no flash. Or sorry, even with flash. As long as Rek'Sai has flash, death is still inevitable. Yeah. So that should have been accepting of no flash there and just accept your death here, because you can't afford to burn flash. Yeah, if they want to kill you there, they will kill you. That doesn't make any sense. And then similar context as well. Let's back this up. Back it up. This was all caused by that barrel right there wanting to trade, and just instead of letting it come into you. There's no patience. There's just, I see target, I hit target. There we go. And then Atomic Sludge still not being able to get the auto attacks off on Aatrox to be able to weave them in. This should also be a W right now because Gangplank has nowhere to run. It's very hard for him to run sideways because that runs directly into Rek'Sai. So more likely than not, Atomic Slug also doesn't recognize that Rek'Sai is coming currently. Smash buttons, yeah. So now, again, it seems like neither side is actually playing around the jungler. Neither side is actually playing around what the lane state can do. They just see opponent and smack opponent. And that seems to be the entire extent of the thought process. And now after all of this fighting, after getting the first blood, we're down 5 farm, 6 farm, 7 farm, 8 farm, 9 farm, 10 farm. We're potentially down 10 farm by 4.5 minutes. While constantly pushing into the opponent, while constantly abusing them. This is what I got annoyed at with the karma from yesterday. Because if you're abusing the opponent, there's no excuse to be missing farm because you're uncontested. So if you're missing farm in that regard, you're probably just straight up overfighting. And overfighting means, okay, it's annoying to the opponent, but it's not good. And luckily, again, Aatrox is not farming well, so it's not that punished. So now you can be up to 2 additional, so it can be 25 to 13, so it can be down 12 farm by this point. What's the elo? Silver. This is silvery. So a similar concept, we have to, with the freeze, we have to be able to break it, so Atomic Slug actually did hold the freeze. When Gangplank burns barrels, this becomes the concept of no cooldowns to cooldowns. Cooldowns fight. Okay, so real quick as well, the main combo on Aatrox versus the majority of targets, this, again, breaks slightly depending on who you're facing, is play so that your Q1 lands. When your Q1 lands, you W. Then, after you W, you can Q2 plus dash. Okay? When you Q2 plus dash, it knocks them up to guarantee they go back to the center. So then from there, you're close enough to be able to auto Q3 when they get rendered back. Then you can auto again. That's your main combo if they are not point blank to you. So when we're looking at this right here with the Gangplank, right, when he has cooldowns up, notice how far this actually is away. So either we're trying to last hit this minion, when we could have just walked up to auto attack it, or we are just that far off depth perception wise. Because we're missing multiple auto attacks and we're missing multiple Qs here in this entire laning phase. And then similar concept, if Gangplank's willing to burn the barrels, Gangplank's willing to burn the barrels. And then the only time he's really spooky to you is Trial by Fire. This passive hits way too hard. Way, way, way too hard to be able to justify taking a hit. So when we're just running at him here for Q, when we go point blank, because we also dashed late here. Now we're just taking the Trial by Fire too. And then also we're missing Q3. So we missed all 3 sweet spots. We missed our dash and our W did nothing. And here's the fun part. Because you're Aatrox, you have no mana cost. It's not the worst thing in the world. I'm assuming 6 comes soon. Yeah, so it's probably 6 into kill, right? Yeah. So this is also what I mean by the lane is incredibly volatile, and Ignite doesn't generally change this unless you're playing super, super aggro level 1, right? Because this is just a W landing. Clearly, Gangplank is in a winning spot, besides being down a level, okay? Gangplank also has a barrel preset up. When Aatrox levels up to 6, AD goes up slightly. He does not press R until everything else happens. So 92 to 86. So you're getting 6 AD. That's all that changes. Okay? So let's look at the actual damage output that gets pumped out here. This is no ultimate. We still have not popped potions. Ignite's not going to save us here. There is no salvaging this. As long as he just plays around Q distance, there's no salvaging that at that point. Ignite doesn't change this matchup. If you play it well, he can't kill you, and then you scale. If you play it poorly, he will kill you. Because if he pops ultimate, so for instance, he plays just for this minion and then does this trade, so he should have autoed that minion then done this. Keep in mind, Aatrox ultimate increases his attack damage by 20%. That's a massive amount of AD, right? So if he's at 100 here, this literally gives him 2 longswords. This is 700 gold worth of damage. If he pops ultimate right now and then Q3s, you're just dead right there. That's gone. Before the orange even works, that's just gone. But then he pops ult super, super late. We didn't barrel whenever he was coming into us. There's so many things that are very heavily misplayed just through clicks. So again, when he's this close, that should be pistol shot into place new barrel, auto attack, use the movement speed to get out. We have ways to avoid this. And then similar concept here, it should already be second barrel place into starting the auto attack so it goes off while he's queuing. Then we auto him instead of the barrel. Did we have passive? We did not have passive, so that's a misplay. So we had to backstep to be able to get the barrel instead of using the movement speed to get out. Most of these are just straight up misclicks. And that's okay, but it's like a good way to be able to think about it is generally players are their elo for a reason, right? There are exceptions to this rule where... Did I just hear a noise? No. It was the background music. All right. Generally, players are their elo for a reason, right? There are some exceptions to this rule where it's like, okay, they've played 10 games. Clearly, they're not their elo, right? But most of the time, people are their elo for a reason. A lot of the times, it's clicks or it's thought process. In this case, for both top laners so far, it is both. Both are very, very poor. Where there is no playing around the wave state, there is no playing around junglers on either side. Then on top of that, there is bad clicks. There is lack of knowledge on their individual champions. Where like, okay, we haven't seen the Aatrox combo yet, where it's Q1 into W, into dash Q2, into auto, into Q3, into auto. Right? None of that's existing. Spacing also hasn't existed between the Gangplank and the Aatrox, where Aatrox could punish Gangplank multiple times. Excuse me. And then Gangplank should have been able to space around Aatrox Qs multiple times. But both sides are basically just smacking their heads against a wall. And then because of that, right, again, the Gangplank has been on Aatrox's side of the map basically the entire game and is down farm. Down kills. I mean, you can make the argument that the singular gank happened. But even if we don't take the singular gank into existence, like even before the gank occurred, right? Let me back this up. We're still down farm. And it's because we're just overfighting so much that we're just missing it. And then once the gank does occur, realistically we have to state, okay, did we know Rek'Sai was topside? Yeah, 100% we did because of where Rek'Sai started. And if we go just our personal vision, we even see the Rek'Sai right here. So then how are we getting caught out by this becomes the question. Doesn't make sense. And the reasoning for why we get caught out is we see opponent, we hit opponent. There is no thought process to where people are, what we can do with the wave, what state we're currently in. It's just see opponent, smack opponent. And the way to be able to play around that then becomes, realistically, if you're volatile, like the opposing jungler is near you or you can potentially die, you can just let the wave come into you, and that's fine. If you do not have the ability to let the wave come into you, and the wave is pushing away from you and you know the jungler's topside, you can either A, call for assistance, have the jungler come up, have the mid laner come up, right? To be able to defend you to push it out. Or option B is just sit back and chill. If you know their jungler's topside, you know there's no way you can push this wave without suiciding. If your jungler can't assist you, probably means they're doing something else, right? They're either helping bot lane, helping mid lane, taking camps on the opposing side of the map. They're doing something. So just because you're not the star anymore doesn't make it so that you just get to go forward. I think that lower laners will focus more on fighting than farming, saying this is jungle main, so I don't know much. It's not that they focus on fighting or farming, because if they focused on fighting, they would play their champions correctly. If they focused on farming, then the farms would be much, much higher. So most of the time with low elo players, like gold and under, there is no focus, and that's the problem. It's just, they played the game to play the game casually. And that's fine. That's perfectly fine. If you don't get paid to play a game, absolutely do it for fun. But if you're still down there after an extended period of time for games, then either, again, you're not good enough mechanically, or you don't have a correct thought process. The correct thought process can be fixed with a 10-minute Google search. The mechanics can be done through either, again, 10-minute Google search, figure out how your champion functions, from like one tricks and things along the lines of that. Or you have to play the game with an intent. You have to play the game to say, I'm going to improve my barrel mechanics. I'm going to improve my Aatrox spacing. Right? But again, most players don't do that, which is fine. If they're playing the game for fun, they're playing the game for fun. Excuse me. So, speeding this up again, we go back to where we were. So then now with this wave, whenever a wave crashes, always pushes back. So now with the wave pushing into Aatrox, we have Lilia hovering. Realistically, Lilia should guarantee this crashes, so she should take the Skull Crab and hover up top to be able to keep safety. Then Aatrox should also not be fighting there. And now with the wave frozen, realistically, there should be Lilia coming up to help. And then you should be able to fight because you have assistance here immediately. But assistance is now gone. Freeze is stuck here. And we need to find some way to be able to deal with it. Congratulations, he just broke the freeze. We don't have to do anything anymore. Wave's coming into you. You can just chill. There we go. Okay. There we go. 8 minutes of play, but we found it. It's not there exactly. It's like it's not 100% correct, but it's there. So for instance, in this case, right? So if we wanted to space this out correctly, the best time to be able to use a skill shot is when the opponent has a burden of execution. And what I mean by that is they have to do something, right? So they have to farm, they have to use an ability, they have to recall, right? They have to do something. In the majority of cases, people have to farm. And when they farm is when they're the most punishable because they're standing still in animation. So if we know Gangplank's going to go for this minion, you start walking up on Aatrox right before he goes for the minion. So that way he locks himself in Q animation, and then you can Q him for free. So the fact that it took us a little bit to be able to get to that point is inherently a problem, but we got there, so we had to use the E. With no E usage there, this just becomes a 100% dead Gangplank. There's nothing you can do about it. Then also, if you notice the backstep here, there is no reason to backstep comparatively to go forward. There are no minions blocking you, so you actively did click back here after your W. And then Q2 lands. I don't know how. That looks slightly out of range. And then it should be, again, auto into Q3. Especially since he doesn't have flash. Oh, we auto Baron still have him. Him is kill. Him is kill. Yeah, Potion was able to save him because of Time Warp. He's not able to Potion if he's knocked up. He can orange, but orange should be done right about here. All oranges are super, super late. So if we auto attack him there for 144, yeah, because that did 150 damage. So 144 was kill. That was auto attack kill. So we misclicked the auto attack, and then we misspaced, and that's the entire reason he's able to escape here. Just misclicks multiple times. We don't seem to understand what the lethal of our champion is, or what the damage is, or what the spacing is. So one of the best things to be able to do is next time you play Aatrox, for instance, look at the actual range of the Q, find a marker just around you, and just look at that, and just get very used to it. So like in Practice Tool, that's a terrible circle. So in Practice Tool, you can place a dummy and try to get as far away from it as possible while still hitting it and get used to that feeling. Because that's spacing. So that way you can find out, okay, now instead of a target dummy, it's an opponent that's moving back and forth and weaving around. Now I have to match those motions. And when I match those motions, you keep that spacing. Gangplank in a similar context wants to be able to know the spacings as well of the opponent so he doesn't get hit. So if he knows Aatrox Q goes out to here and stands right here, he is safe without dash. Or without the Aatrox dashing kind of thing. So spacing works both ways, very, very importantly. Another barrel that doesn't make any sense because realistically, if we want to farm, we're going to be playing up here. By the time the wave gets to us, Aatrox can just walk up to the barrel and clear it unless you know how to ghost barrel. Which, by the way, ghost barreling is you have one barrel up on the map, you throw your Q out, and then you place a second barrel while your Q is going, and it chains. That is ghost barreling. In order to play Gangplank at the highest level, you're required to Ghost Barrel with your safety barrel. So as you're disengaging, there's a spot that's like the max range of your Q, which is when you can Ghost Barrel. So you would disengage right about there. You would shoot the barrel, and then your opponent is going to be generally somewhere close to the barrel because they look like or you are disengaging. Throw out the second barrel on top of them, and you can Ghost Barrel disengage. But this barrel does nothing. You can play this very, very slow and relaxed, and then you sitting back also makes sense. If you have full mana and you're playing Gangplank and your orange doesn't have absurd value, just use the orange in downtime. Heal yourself. Gangplank has a lot of intricate things with him. He is absurdly hard. I love to use him as a teaching champion because you're forced to play mechanically really well. You're forced to play really heavily on the front foot at specific time frames because of your passive, so you're forced to play aggro if you're playing him correctly. Then you're forced to play around the safety barrel, so you're forced to play around your cooldowns as well. So it's another cooldown. Have to play around barrel, have to play around Q cooldown, have to play around bushes for your Q, have to play around your passive for when you can actually all-in the bruiser, have to play around your W cooldown if they have anything important, right? Then also you have to look around the entire map because of your ultimate. If you're not using your ultimate across the entire map, something is inherently wrong. Anytime you use your ultimate in lane phase, it better be to clear the wave that you already screwed up because you can break a freeze with it, or you can take a recall and ult with it. But even that is like, you're choosing that over top of killing someone across the map, which is, it has absurd value. Then as the game progresses, you're forced to play around this little gimmicky mechanic that has to have perfect timing. Congratulations, space perfectly, pay attention to your barrels, pay attention to who's auto-attacking your barrels, and do it. So he's a really, really good learning champion. But for actually winning, I don't recommend him to anyone under Masters because of all of these reasons. If you can play Gangplank correctly, you can skyrocket an elo, but also you could have spent 400 times less time to learn Mordekaiser with base concepts. And then Mordekaiser will also make you climb very, very quickly. Or Darius, or Aatrox, or things like that. There's just so much work that gets put into Gangplank to make him work. It's generally just not worth it for winning. Excuse me. Again, unless under very specific circumstances. So like Aatrox burning that dash makes absolutely no sense. Should just hold dash. So that way when these barrels come out, he just dodges the barrel. He can generally, like if he can just keep running forward, he can always dodge to the side. And then also that barrel timed out. That's hilarious. That's what I meant by that barrel won't do anything. So now Aatrox is also on Gangplank's third of the map. So Gangplank, or the Aatrox really wants to crash this as fast as possible because if we look, we have no idea where Lily is. Not cleanly. So we want to be able to crash this as fast as possible or dive. Aatrox right now, after getting those 2 kills, having double longsword, full ninja tab. Ninja tabby's terrible here, by the way. Let me actually touch on that because I didn't see the purchases. Sheen on first recall is fine. Then longsword, perfectly fine. Ninja tabby's really, really bad here because realistically, you can use the small amount of movement speed from base boots. So it's like, what, 25? Yeah. You can use the 25 movement speed to be able to space around the Gangplank. That's acceptable. But when you finish the full boots, Gangplank's, like, the additional armor and the 12% reduction has infinitely less value than just raw damage and raw stats. Because you're at a state in the game where you're an accelerated Aatrox where if you press R, targets die. And all AD that you build becomes multiplicative because of your ultimate. Everything goes up higher. So whenever you're lacking on damage, instead of spending, what is this, 1,100 golds minus the 300, so 800 gold. So you can have an additional 2 longswords worth of damage here, basically. Right? Or a pickaxe. You could actually just have a pickaxe. Oh no, you're going Eclipse build. So you would have Serrated Dirk Dagger. Yeah. Or Longsword, sorry. You have Serrated Dirk Longsword. So you would have 30 AD, you would have the lethality, and then you have an additional 10 AD. So yeah, it would actually be 40 more AD. Or 40 total AD. Again, that gets compounded through ultimate. Right now, it's... If you ult on Aatrox, that is Q3 plus auto attack from death. If you have that full build. Right now, it's Q2 and Q3 plus potentially 1 to 2 auto attacks. Probably 2 auto attacks there. So right here, all we should do is just press ultimate, run directly at the Gangplank, and he's just dead. He cannot dodge your Q3, especially if you start with W. Your Q3 100% kills, there is no flash, and this is why Gangplanks have to play around the safety barrel. Because if you don't have a safety barrel, what stops Aatrox from just bum rushing here? Similar concept, don't place it in the middle. Placing in the middle destroys your wave. So now we're just missing minions for free. Q. Similar concept, should just be ult, run at him. This is a very, very dead Gangplank. The fact that he's still alive is a travesty. And this is what I was talking about, where if Gangplank plays it perfectly, he can deal with the Aatrox, he can keep up with him, he can be perfectly fine. But the fact of the matter is, he didn't. Because he didn't play around the the jungler whatsoever that he knew where he was. Then he fought the Aatrox, but messed up very, very heavily mechanically. And now Aatrox is screwing up because Gangplank should be getting dove on repeat here. We can very clearly see this in the VOD, right? So this is as much on the Gangplank as it is on the Aatrox. Because, again, your rank is based off of two things. How many mistakes you make and how many mistakes you punish. The fact that the Gangplank isn't being punished here comes to bite him in the ass later. Because also, if we look, farms are also very, very bad. What I was talking about in the last VOD was realistically your target to be just functional is 7 farm a minute. In the lower elos, the best two things you can do to be able to climb is pick 2 to 3 champions. No more than that. Don't care about, like, oh, this champion fits in this spot. Don't care. Nope. You're already having issues on all the champions. Just pick 2 to 3. Learn them really, really well. Then, learn how to farm. Because that 7 base a minute becomes insane when people are at 35, 48. Look at this. When you have 7 farm a minute, instead of being at the bare minimum of the curve, you're severely above the curve in low elo. Because no one farms. Because everybody just perma-fights randomly. And then they're not good enough to perma-fight, so it coin flips it, and that's why they are where they are. So, now, similar concept. Aatrox still has no idea where Lily is. Rek'Sai is nowhere nearby, and we are still in lane. We are still pushing, sitting on 800 gold. And we are still now just willing to go all in. What are we doing? What happened here? People are willing to randomly fight without the mechanical prowess to be able to do it. So there's multiple minions in the way. We're running through here. We have no idea where the jungler is. Not a clue in the world. And we're just willing to fight. That is called being a psychopath, sir. We also had flash. That was kill. Trade flash for flash. If Gangplank doesn't flash, that just guaranteed kills it. Because again, super, super late orange. Orange just didn't exist there. Yep. That's just flash Q3 because no orange was ever in existence. This should be either an immediate flash or an orange at the same time. This is internal return? No, this is OU tryouts. People gave me their time, so I'm willing to give them my time. Fair is fair. So, now with this, Aatrox has no ultimate. Gangplank has been able to survive for a very long extended period of time. And everything is back to neutral. Even though Gangplank should have been dead, now he's just down 12 farm plus a death. Doesn't make any sense. I hope. So, with this, right, we run into a thing where now that Gangplank is so far behind the curve, he's a champion that has large issues coming back. And he also has 2 separate builds, which on this reset, we're going to see what build he ends up going for. The 2 builds are the Essence Reaver build. That's a terrible E. Let me redo that. Essence Reaver build and the Tri build. All right, the Triforce build. Both of them have their merit. Both of them do separate things. The Triforce build is much, much better. And this is why. The Essence Reaver build goes Essence Reaver into Prowlers. I'm dying. There's an item in the middle there. Oh, because the old build had Myrrh mana. That's why. So it goes Essence Reaver into Prowlers into Collector or LDR, and then it can go Triforce. Not Triforce, Infinity Edge. So by the time it hits the 4th item is the time it starts fully functioning. No, not playing. That's for if Brent hops in. So, with that, right, you come online at 4 items, and that's when you're fully functional. Problem with that. Games are determined before 4 items almost always. And the build kind of sucks up until that point, comparatively. The Triforce build comes online at 1 item. Then you have 3 separate options to be able to play this Triforce build out. You can either go Triforce, so it'd be Triforce into Infinity Edge straight up, plus 3 crit cloaks. That gives you 70% crit. That works. Or is it 65? That one's 65, the other is 70. That works. That is the fastest you can ever come online as Gangplank. That is the smallest amount of gold for you to state, my crits hit for 1,000. And that works. Triforce also makes you Bruisier too, which gives you a much, much better early game compared to the other option. Oh, it's going to be fun, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. So, option 2 is you can go Triforce into Collector, because realistically, Gangplank doesn't like LDR as much as other champions because his barrels already give him percent pen. So, flat pen plus percent pen is nice. Percent pen works multiplicatively. So, the math gets kind of wonky there. Still likes LDR, but after Collector. Then into Infinity Edge plus 2 crit cloaks. That works. This allows you for a better mid-game, comparatively. Because Collector level 2, Collector second item, comes online before your Infinity Edge comes online. But this will be weaker comparatively to once you finish the Infinity Edge plus 3 crit cloaks. Right. The other option is just Triforce into Collector, into LDR, into IE. The people that are building Mortal Reminder on him, it's because it is the cheapest crit item in the entire game. That is the entire reason they're doing it. They're not doing it for the anti-heal. They're not doing it for the attack speed. They're doing it because they want their Infinity Edge online as fast as possible. I just gave 2 options, in which case Infinity Edge comes online earlier with real items. So why would I waste my gold on a Mortal Reminder? Doesn't make sense. So the whole Mortal Reminder thing, if you ever see a Gangplank building Mortal Reminder, it better be because he's the only one that can build anti-heal. All other reasons, there's a better build for it. So in this game in particular, where you have to deal with an Aatrox who is accelerated, a Rek'Sai, and a Vladimir, you basically just don't want to get one-tapped. Also, Lethality Misfortune. You just don't want to get one-tapped. So if you go the Essence Reaver build, by the time you finish and get to your 4 core, the game is already completely determined. You are already overkilling the opponents. They are worthless besides Vladimir and Zillion. They don't get to function anymore. Your job is then to make items 1 through 3 as functional as possible. So the Essence Reaver build falters. Doesn't make sense to do. Essence Reaver build. Okay. So this is the incorrect build. Then Aatrox on the flip side, this is Pickaxe. Is this Gore Drinker? I have to go forward now. What time are we at? 10:19? Okay. So, Gore Drinker is really, really bad here. The reason Gore Drinker is really, really bad here is because there's not a single person on the opposing team that plays at melee range. So how are you activating Gore Drinker? You just can't. So then you would want to go Eclipse, because keep in mind, Eclipse also gives you a large amount of sustain. It gives you Omnivamp, he loves it. It gives you a shield, loves it. He gives you movement speed to be able to land more abilities, loves it. Then also it gives you just straight up more damage. And remember, damage is healing for him. So on top of the fact that it literally does give you a shield, which is immediate life, it also gives you more effective life than Gore Drinker ever would through the bonus damage because you're healing for more. Then also targets are actually dying. When the target dies, their damage output drops to 0. So then all of the damage that they're missing now counts as healing. Because it's damage that was prevented. It is no different than if you built armor or magic resist to be able to deal with someone and then they died later. Same exact concept. So especially when you're looking at this team, Aatrox should be one-shotting them come 3 items. Everybody should just, if Q3 lands, he Q3 auto-attacks you, you're gone. But he should never get there because Sever movement speed, Nami, Gangplank, Lilia should be beefy, so Lilia could be the one exception. So Gore Drinker doesn't work here. So now we both reset and we're basically neutral. So in 10 minutes of play, basically what we can incur from this top lane is that both sides do not know how to play their champion fully, which is fine. Both sides have very, very poor clicks because spacing is a huge, huge issue on both sides, right? Both sides do not understand the cooldowns to no cooldowns thing, which again, heavily explained in the first one. Both sides do not know how to build based on the situation. Again, fine. Perfectly fine. That's why we're addressing it. Both sides do not know runes. And then to top it all off, both sides do not know how to farm. Because Aatrox was on the back foot the entire time, then started getting on the front foot, should be able to farm at that point. Gangplank has 45 farm at 11 minutes, when the first 8 minutes of the game we're playing right at Aatrox's start. So none of that makes sense. So we can firmly establish, right, the only reason that either of these two champions would be able to function in a real competitive environment at this point, I'm talking even Plat Plus, is if the opponent was really, really bad. Because there's so many problems that need to be able to be fixed in order for functionality to occur. Excuse me. And a lot of the problems, again, are more basic things, where you can look up a guide on that champion, take 15 minutes on YouTube, and it makes sense. Some of the things are more, more hidden comparatively, like the Gangplank builds, where it's the Triforce into Infinity Edge, into the 3 crit cloaks. There are very, very few people preaching that thought process. And in reality, that thought process also works towards AD carries. Fun fact. Because AD carries, if they're looking for as fast of a spike as possible for burst damage and they're a crit AD carry, like Misfortune can do this, you can go Mythic into Infinity Edge into 2 crit cloaks, because Mythic is the 20% crit that Collector would normally fill up for the Gangplank build. Just as a fun fact. What? Oh, it's more Pentakill. Pentakill songs are gonna keep screwing with me because they actually have words in them instead of just music. All right. So now, when we play throughout this as well, we can also establish that both sides do not look at where junglers are. Both sides do not look at lane states and try to create them into an advantageous position. They both look at each other and say, we're smacking. The exception of this is Atomic Slug ended up freezing twice, broke one of the 2 freezes instantaneously. But the freezing did exist. So, best thing to be able to take away for both of you then becomes, okay, Aatrox combo and spacing needs to be in existence. 100%. Because if we can't space on Aatrox, all of a sudden we can't play this champion because the entire champion is spacing, right? Part 2 then becomes we have to be able to manipulate our wave state in a way that we want to have a positive result. So if the wave is coming into us, we can state that, okay, we want to be able to freeze it if we have the ability to either fight the opponent or our jungler is coming up. That way it becomes a very, very easy gank. If the wave is pushing away from us, we want to first off make sure we're safe. So if you don't know where the jungler is, go out and ward. Take 3 seconds and ward it. It's fine. Then from there, we want to be able to crash the wave, because if it's pushing, we're going to want to crash it. We don't want to give the opponent a free freeze. Then when we crash it, we have to determine, okay, 3 things. Are we diving? Are we abusing the person underneath turret because the jungler is nowhere near and I have high resources? Or are we taking a recall? Recall / roam. You can go roam as well during this time frame. But we need to choose an option, and then we need to choose an option based off of correct information. Right? Because jungle tracking is not difficult. I talked about it in the last video a little bit, but for the most part, right, junglers have set reasons to be where they are because their farm is stagnant. Their farm has specific spots at where they are. And then also, you are volatile at specific moments. So, for instance, that whole concept of, like, okay, blue side jungler is top, wave is pushing this way, Gangplank can absolutely die. Because Gangplank has a burden of execution to farm, and the farm is walking away from him. So he has to walk up for it. If the wave is pushing into Gangplank and we know the jungler's top, just sit back and do nothing. Just play experience range. It's fine. Because here's the fun fact. In 10 minutes of play, there are 107 minions that come out. 107 minions. So at 10 minutes, if you want 7 farm a minute, just that 70, which normally I look at 10 minutes and 15 minutes as my snapshots. 15 is better for losing lanes. 10 minutes is better for winning lanes. I'll explain why in a second. So if at 10 minutes, if you want to have 7 farm a minute, you can miss 37 minions. 37 minions, and you still have 7 farm a minute. That's how easy it is to be able to do. 37 minions is a lot. That is, what is that, 5? That is 6 full waves plus a minion, not counting candy minions. You can miss 6 entire waves. You can be AFK for 3 minutes, completely AFK, and still get this 10 farm a minute. Or sorry, 7 farm a minute, 7. So the reason I look at 10 minutes for winning matchups is because you have no reason to be missing farm. You're on the front foot. You're not being abused. You should be able to get that farm. So 10 minutes is better for the snapshot for winning lanes because you should be winning during that time frame in a winning lane. 15 minutes is better for losing lanes because generally there comes a point where it's like 1 item to 1.5 items where people start being able to fight back even in losing matchups, or they can start clearing faster. So at 15 minutes, you should be at 120 farm. That's still 7 a minute. And in losing matchups, generally you get the majority of that later on. So like Aatrox right now has the ability to farm 60 minions in the next 5 minutes. 4 minutes. Because if each wave is 6 minions, right? And in 4 minutes, we have 8 waves. There's 48 minions there, right? 48. Then we can take into consideration, okay, every 3rd wave there is a cannon. So in 8 waves, every 3rd wave there's a cannon, there should be, what is that, 2? 2 minions. So there are 50 minions on the board. From 11 minutes forward. Approximately, right? So there are 50 minions on the board. To be able to get 60, we can farm perfectly, and we can get camps. As an Aatrox who was abused incredibly heavily, then has had bad farm from being on the front foot, and all we have to take is 2 jungle camps, and we can hit very, very close to 120. Because also there's 2 minions right here. So we can get the 63 here. It's even doable from this state. Excuse me. Gangplank, however, who was on the front foot the entire time, has no chance to be able to do it. It's already gone. And again, 7 farm a minute should be the lowest value possible. What are we doing here? So this goes back into that wave state thing if we want to be able to punish at specific times. Realistically, right? When the waves are both completely gone, if our conversation is we want to be able to attack this Gangplank, we have to think about how we're attacking this Gangplank, right? He can take 3 steps backwards, walk underneath turret, and the Aatrox can't hit him anymore. So if we want to run directly at him here, Gangplank always gets to choose the fight. This is the problem with being on the opposing third of the map, right? Like we talked about earlier. So when we run directly at him, and he has a safety barrel, which, by the way, again, safety barrel is beautiful. Absolutely beautiful thing, because it makes the opponent's life very, very hard. This is all we're accomplishing. Because by the time the next wave comes in, we don't want to fight anymore, because minions actually hurt. So during complete downtime, we end up just losing 3/4 of our life. And so for something that served no purpose. Because, again, you can't fight someone on their opposing third of the map cleanly. You can get little chips off, but that's about it. But if you're trying to chip versus a Gangplank with a safety barrel there, doesn't make sense. Excuse me. Okay, speeding through very quickly. Could Aatrox have won this fight? Yes, Aatrox could have won this fight. So this is how strong Aatrox is as a side note. Just double checking summoners. So he has flash up. Yeah, both sides have flash. Okay. If Aatrox waits to take this fight up until he has ultimate up, he wins this fight. All he has to do is wait for ultimate. That's it. But also, again, similar thing as we talked about before, TP can fix mistakes in the early game. That's its entire purpose in life. So now Aatrox just TP's back, and it's as if the trade never happened. So an Aatrox should, while this cannon minion is being shot at, stop hitting the wave, go bum rush, find Gangplank, stop his recall. If you can ever stop someone's recall, absolutely do it. And that's why also whenever you're doing like a 3-wave recall, so like you crash the wave and you're looking for a recall, you don't stand in this bush if the opponent has any ability that can be thrown in this bush. So if you're facing a Mundo, for instance, Mundo will just walk past the wave, miss 0 minions, throw a cleaver to check for you, and then go back to what he was doing. Under those contexts, you walk here. So Aatrox has a long-range Q, a dash, and a W. He can just stand right here past the caster wave, W and E at the same time to be able to get or check this bush. And if that lands, your entire recall is stopped, and you just are in a hard losing state. Just as a side note. Oh, I never went over the Gangplank things. So with the I talked about what Aatrox wanted to be able to do to be able to improve from here. On Gangplank's side, you have to be able to have a safety barrel at all points in time, because if you don't have a safety barrel, you will die. You want to be able to start ghost barreling, because you can go into practice tool and learn how to ghost barrel. It's again, you want to be at max range for pistol. When the pistol shot starts is when you throw the second barrel. Okay? Because that's going to be required to be able to play Gangplank in the future, especially come team fight phase and then laning phase some, right? Third thing then becomes spacing around your Q, right? Because if you don't space around your Q, it's very obvious when you start running directly at someone that you're going to Q them, so they can just walk into a bush, and then it's like, well, I can't Q them anymore, right? Part 4 then becomes Gangplank has his passive. Utilize the passive much better starting in the early game. You want to fight as long as that's up. You're incredibly abusive as a champion. Part 5 then becomes you have to start playing around where the opposing jungler is. Because realistically, if you keep throwing barrels in the middle of the wave and you keep AFK pushing, you're going to keep dying on repeat to anyone with a brain on the opposing team. If your mid lane is losing, that mid lane is going to come up and kill you on repeat. If the opposing jungler recognizes that you're just throwing barrels in the middle of the wave, you will die on repeat. If the opposing laner recognizes that you're throwing barrels in the middle of the wave, he will just make you intentionally pop them, take some damage, and now you're just always pushing into the opponent. Okay? It's annoying for the opponent, but they can farm just fine underneath turret if they're decent as a player. Excuse me. And then also Gangplank builds. I think personally the Essence Reaver build is basically just troll. Because again, it comes online at 4 items. If you're hyper accelerated, then you could potentially justify it. But it's so hard to justify. And I know the argument to that is like, oh, Solar Baka uses it and things like that sometimes. But keep in mind, they're also streamers doing things for memes. So if they get a massive one-shot, they get money off of that because it looks fancy and they can put it in a compilation. We do not care about looking fancy. We care about consistency. Because consistency means everything, especially in lower elos. Why are we doing this? This hurts my soul. This should just be a dive. This is, again, dead again. Oh, yeah, one additional thing. Learn Aatrox's lethals. Learn how much damage he actually does by focusing on, like, okay, how far is their health bar moving? Because there's been so many times that Gangplank should just be dead underneath his own turret. That's insane. This lane should very easily be 7 kills on Aatrox. Excuse me. And 7 deaths on Gangplank. Super, super easily. Excuse me. It just snowballs out of control so quickly. And Gangplank does get snowballed on very quickly, and Aatrox does get hyper accelerate very quickly. So that's something to be able to keep in mind. All right. I wanted to go faster this time because I do want to stop at 12. So that was 2 hours for one roll. That's not that bad. All right. Junglers. Oh, that was blinding. I hated that. I hated every second of that. Junglers. Okay. So realistically, both junglers have to path top lane here. They do not have an option, right? Because in bot lane, you have, on blue side, a Zilean. Zilean does not help you with ganks. Basically at all. It kind of just sucks. Zilean is not a laning phase champion. He gets accelerated and then gets to function later on through just being old and time shit. His E becomes a monstrous ability. His ult becomes a monstrous ability, and he has value off of that. Yep. So, you want to be able to path away from that because it should be fine. You have to salvage it every once in a while, but it should be okay. On the flip side, Lilia has to path top lane too. And she has to 3-camp. She doesn't have an option, because if she doesn't 3-camp and Rek'Sai does, Gangplank just dies. It becomes a turret dive. No one's happy there. Right? So with that context, it's one of those things of a farming jungler can play as a ganking jungler in order to be preventative. Right? They don't want to play as a ganking jungler, but if a 0-0 Rek'Sai and a 0-0 Lilia come both into existence, the Lilia will still have value, the Rek'Sai will not. Right? Especially since during the downtime, Lilia will still be able to have relevant farms. So instead of having 9 farm a minute, which is very standard for a Lilia jungle, she would have 8. Okay? 8 farm a minute Lilia, comparatively to a Rek'Sai at 3.5 farm a minute, because Rek'Sai literally can't farm. We're pretty happy with that. Both are 0-0-0 under those contexts, right? So, with this, both want to be able to path top. Now, we talked about farming junglers and ganking junglers last time. Rek'Sai is a ganking jungler because she falls off the face of the planet very, very quickly. She also has no clear. It just doesn't exist. Lilia is a farming jungler because she does care about items past her second item. She does still scale throughout the game. She has multiple different build paths, and her clear is absurdly fast. So this wants to be able to power farm. This wants to be able to power gank. And realistically, again, left side is the one that's supposed to be the abusers for the most part, right? So Rek'Sai realistically should be 3-camping. And 3-camp should consist of red into blue into Gromp. The reason you do blue into Gromp instead of Gromp into blue is because of the heal on Gromp at the end. Excuse me. In first rotation, that has more value than extending the lifetime of the blue buff by a slight amount, especially for Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai doesn't give a fuck about blue. Okay. So the fact that we start full clearing on Rek'Sai is inherently a conundrum to we don't understand what a ganking jungler is, we don't understand the volatility of an Ignite top laner, and we don't understand what our job is. Similar context. If Lilia is full clearing, we don't understand what our job is here. We don't understand the volatility of an Ignite top laner. We just want to be able to full clear to be able to have relevancy. And again, in lower elos, one of the best things you can do is just have an absurdly high amount of farm. Because then you can always stay relevant, always stay heavily above the curve comparatively to everybody else, and function. So it's not the worst thing, because things like this happen a lot in low elo, where this has no excuse for occurring. Well, let me phrase that. No, it's not no excuse. I want to give information back where it's as relevant as possible and like as high level as possible. But there comes a time where something is so far off the beaten path that it just doesn't make any logical sense. But then realistically, it's like, okay, can I really judge that at the highest level then? No, that just makes me a dick comparatively. So with this, we can even see the clear speed differentials as a side note, where Lilia should be done with Krugs by 315. 100%. She can 315 clear. So this is a slower Lilia clear by 1 full camp, or almost 1 full camp. And Rek'Sai is still down a camp. So Rek'Sai should be down 2 full camps versus the Lilia in the standard game. There's no way you can trade farm for farm and have functionality there. It will never work. Excuse me. Then as well, one of the things I heavily dislike about junglers is they'll skip their final camp in a clear to go for Skullcrab. After the Skullcrab changes, this Skullcrab doesn't give you the experience to hit level 4, this does. So what happens if Rek'Sai takes this camp, hits level 4, Lilia skips her camp to be able to go for Skullcrab. Okay, well now it's a level 3 Lilia, who has a camp right here, and who can potentially go for second Skullcrab, versus a level 4 opposing jungler who can just bum rush the other Skullcrab. The level 4 jungler is probably going to win. And then this Lilia then goes back to her camp. So now all of a sudden, because you went for this camp instead of this camp, this respawns faster. Awesome. We're happy with that. We want our camps to respawn as fast as possible to be able to get the experience. So now notice that this situation just occurred where Rek'Sai skipped this camp to go for this. Lilia took her camp, showed up late. The camp's already gone. Lilia just runs to opposite scuttle and doesn't care. Lilia just runs to opposite scuttle and doesn't care. Right? Right? There's an exception to this rule of, like, if you show up here and, like, bot lane's already rotated or mid lane's rotated to be able to defend it, a problem can occur. But in first Skullcrab, it's so easy to kill. By the time Lilia would get there, Smite would be back up. If we did it correctly, we'd only need one Smite either way, so then second Smite would just be for Skullcrab. But you can just immediately pop this. And even if you don't get this, your camps have already respawned, so you would just go take your camps instead. And just go second rotation, outpower clear the opponent. So now with this, right, back to the Rek'Sai, after the Skullcrab, we end up going back to that camp anyway, so here's the sequence we just talked about. And then Gangplank is still all the way shoved up, so we just punish this. This is bad pathing. Realistically, it should be taken this way. And then Atomic Sludge should be taken this low, because right now, Rek'Sai can solo kill the Gangplank. Aatrox is not even needed in this equation. Let me see mechanics. Rek'Sai doesn't have too many mechanics. It's just you can press W to be able to knock up instead of right-clicking. So you can choose what target, but if it's a singular target, you should basically just always be right-clicking. I think it extends the range just barely when you activate it instead of right-click, but it's not generally worth it. Then also we still have Tunnel System, so this can be knock-up. And then it should be kiting this way the entire time. So that way when Gangplank flashes, or if Gangplank flashes, you're still good to go. You can still kite. There should be one more auto. Yeah, so Rek'Sai could be here instead of here and still hitting. And then Rek'Sai E'd. Okay, there's the E. So E came out late. The second that this hits Max Fury, it should just be an immediate E. And then Rek'Sai still solo kills this because Aatrox so far, like, that would just still be, like, 2 auto attacks into kill. Aatrox wasn't needed there, especially if Rek'Sai kited correctly. Because then if Rek'Sai kited correctly, this tunnel wasn't even needed. Excuse me. But yeah. So now with no TP, Rek'Sai ends up walking into mid lane. Because unfortunately, the problem with Rek'Sai is Rek'Sai is forced to be hyper-accelerated. Rek'Sai is forced to kill people on repeat, intentionally skip camps to try to find plays that exist, and then work from there. But instead, we walk mid and we recall. Because there was no play to be had. If there's no play to be had, we should have just recalled all the way up here. Now we have to start thinking about where we're going. So, Rek'Sai, again, wants to perma-gank. That is her entire purpose in life. Right? So whenever you're leaving base, you should always be thinking about what can actually occur. Every time you leave base, you should have a plan. And every lane should have this. Most notably supports and junglers. So when we're looking at this state, and we back this all the way up, we notice something very specific happening here. Our top laner did not reset. There is still minions here and a freeze. And that means Gangplank has to walk back up here. And as a ganking jungler, your job is to say, screw all of my camps, I'm going to go kill that because that has more value than my camps. I have to be accelerated. I don't have an option. Then by the time this play convenes, your blue side can be back up and you can start pathing towards bottom, get a reset off, and then path back up towards top and just play for murder. Because again, Rek'Sai's willing to skip camps. Rek'Sai doesn't care. You can also potentially go camp into straight up into red side and vertical clear and then into another gank top lane. But basically, you should be ganking top constantly now because Gangplank has no flash. Keep attacking the no flash. But instead, we go to Raptors. So if we wanted to full clear, why didn't we start with Krugs? If we wanted to path downwards, why didn't we start with Wolves and path down? And then this is just desynced now because we took it late. So where do we path towards? What are we doing? So we're looking for this camp into mid lane. Okay. Mid lane's not necessarily wrong, but the problem is, notice how this wave state still will be here for an extended period of time because a new wave is just coming in. We had time to do Krugs if that was our option. So you can go Krugs into this, into mid lane. Or you can go this, into, well, technically it should be top lane, then into this, into mid lane. Because Rek'Sai wants to permagank. That's her entire purpose in life. And again, as well, I talked about this last time. If you attack multiple different places, everybody has different values of resources. So we burn top's flash. If we gank mid here, we burn mid's flash. Then we gank top again, and his ultimate is up to be able to prevent us. And then we gank top again, and then his flash is now back up. We're missing windows of opportunity because we're taking too long to be able to go back to spots where we should be attacking. Now we're going Krugs, but now it doesn't make sense. Realistically, as jungle, you always want to make sure everything is in sync as much as possible. So you're just self-desyncing your camps. It's not worth it unless there's a play that can be made. Guaranteed 100%. But there wasn't. It was iffy. Now, similar context, the second we take this, we see Gangplank right here. We see a freeze right here. We should have just skipped our camps and ganked top. Wave is pushing in right now. Unless this gives you 6, you do not touch it. It does not give you 6. This needs to die. This has to die. If we're playing Rek'Sai, we are going. Now they know exactly where you are. Wave is still coming in. You have a way around this. There are 2 ways to do this. One is, yeah, you can tunnel this way and go all the way around. Right? Or, option B, there are specific blind spots in the game. Right? Where you can tunnel here. Or even just walk through here. This is a blind spot. You can hug this wall and go in. And Skullcrab will not see you. Skullcrab will see you here. Similar concept in Dragon Pit. You can get through here just fine. You cannot get through here just fine. Same exact concept. So, the fact that we're not looking towards top still is inherently a problem. Because once we take this tunnel over, you can loop all the way around. We watched him go and place a ward here, meaning he thinks he's safe. Walk over here. Take this blast cone. Take it over. Sit here. Whenever you're ready to go, you're ready to go. This is a flashless Gangplank. The more I look at this game, it makes my brain look like a scrambled egg. Well, that's the problem, right? Because when I first started talking with you initially, we gave you a base list to be able to figure out the basics to be able to function, right? These tryouts are designed in a way to be able to showcase very, very specific things. So I wanted to see, does this player understand this? So in the lower elo games, generally like what we end up doing, if you missed the beginning, was this side's supposed to be smack face, this side's supposed to be counter engage. This side should win early, this side should win late. If at any point in time a red side wins a game, a blue side wins a game, we're going to look at that game really heavily to see what happened. Anyways, so now Rek'Sai has the ability to come up here, take this blast cone over, go over top of the wall, and because you know exactly where wards are, just wait here and now go behind him. Even if you just go from right here and tunnel over this wall, we have to make the argument of Gangplank standing right here has some ability to survive this. He has to have some ability to survive it, because if not, why does this ward make a difference? If Gangplank is standing here, and you show up on this ward, he's already dead. He will get caught right there and die. So why does it matter that you're seen on a ward? Wards are an illusion of safety. Wards are an illusion of being able to know where people are. Because realistically, similar concept, right? If this just gets taken, right, and Rek'Sai turns the corner and sees, oh yeah, this is fresh. We know for a fact Lilia is somewhere in this general area. Do we have to know where exactly to state mid lane do not fight, top lane do not fight? No. If we saw Lilia verbatim right there that second, you can make exactly the same argument. So why does it matter that we see her? Similar concept. This ward is supposed to be able to see the jungler. If the jungler can go right by it and still kill you, this does not save you. Because a lot of people, for instance, will ward right here and then Hecarim comes out fucking as a speeding bullet. And it's like, oh, well, I'm just dead. It's like, yeah, because you warded in the wrong spot. Hecarim has super movement speed, so you have to ward preemptively to see him. So similar concept. If you have no flash, because remember, we weren't supposed to burn flash up here, you're not allowed to walk up here versus a Rek'Sai, because Rek'Sai should just be camping you like crazy. So then speeding up, Rek'Sai's camps are super, super desynced, because then after we went bonk into bonk, into bonk, into bonk. So now all of a sudden, the next respawn timers are this, into this, into this, into this. Notice how we're going down to go up if we want to farm. Doesn't make any sense. But this is what happens when you desync your own camps. And now as well, we're still playing hyper power farming Rek'Sai, because we've ganked 1 time in 9 minutes. This does not make Rek'Sai a champion. 1 gank in 9 minutes is awful. Doesn't do anything. And then again, desyncing our camps. Everything just stays desynced. We're not even giving mid lane our blue buff, which is good on Vlad, by the way. It's not the best, but it gives him CDR, which he does care about. And again, we can look at wave states. This wave state is pushing in. We have a very, very behind Gangplank. Why are we not looking to dive? This is just a dive. Gangplank dies on repeat. Even if we don't come, Aatrox can solo kill the Gangplank at this stage. We are just not ganking. We are choosing to... Okay, you also don't need to check this with Q, because you can always just see with the little burrow senses. If there are no pings in here, it's not started. Because the Rift Herald and Dragon will always ping whenever they attack. So you don't have to worry about that. So again, now we're just going back to farming. And we're playing for the wrong side of the map. Court, that is Kevin. Kevin is at Kent. Kevin's awesome. Kevin, that is Court. Court is also awesome. So, with this, right? Whenever we're playing for a side of the map, we want to continuously attack that side of the map on repeat, right? We want to attack their resources constantly. We want to make that side strong side. When we're attacking that strong side, generally we're also taking the objective near them. Long story short is if you're playing for top side, you want to play towards heralds. If you're playing for bot side, you want to play towards dragons. Are there things that break this rule? Yeah, absolutely. But if we can have a 7-0 Aatrox right now at 11 minutes, and then we give him a herald to be able to break the turret, and then we just let him walk around the map murking people, that's infinitely better than getting a singular dragon, right? And just farming as Rek'Sai, and still being down in farm while you've only power farmed. Rek'Sai can't power farm, not an option. So I'm going to stop from here because there's no point looking at the Rek'Sai anymore because we can clearly see that we just didn't understand it was a ganking jungler. We're trying to power farm as a ganker. Doesn't make sense. So now we can look at the Lilia. So we can already establish that Lilia's pathing is inherently wrong because we want to be able to 3-camp towards top to be able to prevent the 3-camp into your Ignite Gangplank is now dead. Sadness. You can potentially 4-camp because you're so fast comparatively to the Rek'Sai, where if you do 4-camp, you end up taking wolves, then going into red, then going into top to be able to protect it. But that's more based on, if we look right now, we can see their wave state, and their wave state is relatively neutral, but already the volatility has started. So this becomes an immediate 3-camp because its first jungler up top wins. And whichever side gets an early lead, well, let me rephrase this. If Aatrox gets an early lead, the game is over for Gangplank for a long period of time. If Gangplank gets a lead, Aatrox still one-shots from at 6. You have to be very cautious of that. Speeding up, speeding up, speeding up. Normal clear. That is delayed. That should all be all the way up here by the time you finish it. This is delayed. That should be here by the time you finish it, and you should already be nutting over the wall. So this is why your clear was so slow. You just didn't pull out camps far enough. Similar concept. The second you finish that, should be all the way up here if you're looking to be able to gank or do anything here. So you're looking for Skullcrab, for instance. Yeah, so you should be all the way up here. So if you did a correct clear, you actually met him right here, double scuttled him, then got to continue your pathing. Oh, excuse me. Speeding up. So then reset shouldn't have come into play. It should have just been run immediate bottom, because then you can gank through mid to be able to get the Skullcrab as well. Because also, if we back this up to when you recalled, we can look at lane states. Back it up. Back it up. All right. Let's look at lane state. If you notice, there's something very, very specific about your Veigar here as you're recalling. No mana. So whenever a lane is in a bad state, right, it's half on the laner's job to be able to say they're in a bad state, half on the jungler to be able to recognize they're in a bad state. So we have to establish, will this Veigar have enough mana to be able to crash this wave and get a reset off? Or will this Veigar have enough mana to be able to cause kill pressure so he can crash the wave naturally and reset? And the answer is absolutely not. So he requires assistance here. He requires a gank to be able to get out of the state. So him being in a bad state is partially based on his play, partially based on just straight up, Court, you missed where you need to be able to be as an assistance. So now when we're looking towards bot lane, because realistically, Skullcrab, we want this, right? We have to look at bot lane. And if we look at our bot lane, these two are in a pretty okay state. These two are in a relatively poor state. What happens if we force out a Misfortune? Oh, they're also playing all the way up here, by the way, too. This can very, very easily just be, you should come in here and make their lives a living hell. This should be gank first, especially when you saw Rek'Sai top. Because you saw Rek'Sai top, you know you have additional time to be able to take these camps without being contested. Alright, so in this case, you chose to go mid lane. Why did we choose to go mid lane? Because Veigar ran out of mana for free. Okay. Alright, so in similar concept, there's no way we create lethal. Just go for the wave. Don't worry about it. Perfect. Okay, so we chose mid instead of bot. Perfectly fine. And also, again, I love to talk about this as well because, like, every time I go to the jungler section, I blame them a lot just because there's so much that gets missed. But in all reality, I'm only saying so much about the jungler because it's the jungler section. Normally, for competitive play, I love to be able to state if a lane is in a bad spot, either it's a bad matchup that needed help or it's a winning matchup and you fucked up. That's the lane's fault. The lane should be able to determine what state it's in. There are so many mistakes that players make on the opposing side that no lane is ever a guaranteed loss, right? No lane should ever be hemorrhaging absurdly hard. And if it is, that's the jungler's job to be able to fix it. And then also, when a mistake does occur from your team, fix it. But for the most part, it is like 70% lane's fault generally and 30% jungler's fault for just missing the fact that they needed to fix a mistake. Because it is their job. It's kind of like a janitor having to clean up poop off the bathroom floor. There's not supposed to be poop on the floor. You're not supposed to miss the toilet. Still your job to clean it. So in similar concept, when we're finishing this up, should be all the way up there. Beautiful. Much better. Much, much better. Could be farther. Wolves, similar concept, should be all the way out here. Speeding up, speeding up, speeding up. And we're just full clearing on repeat. So every time we pass through, as a base level, when we finish this, we should be looking mid lane at the worst of the worst case scenario, right? So, Rek'Sai is in existence. Our Veigar is currently all the way pushed up. Let's go just to our vision. Our Veigar is currently pushed all the way up. What are the odds that Rek'Sai could gank this? Pretty high, right? So the way to think about playing versus a ganking jungler is what lanes of mine are volatile, and then defend them. Because if Rek'Sai just trades farm for farm and you're exactly equal in farm, that's still a win for you. Realistically, there should be downtime, so you should be able to farm. So that should be a win for you even more because you should be higher farm. And then Rek'Sai just falls off the face of the planet. So when your lane is pushed up like this has to be a defense because every 30 seconds, this Rek'Sai can just gank mid lane. And this is on timer. He's gone. And then the feeding starts. This is also why a lot of junglers, like, especially lower elos, come to me and complain. And they're just like, oh, my lanes just keep dying on repeat. And I'm like, did you look at the lane? No. Did you see Fizz hit level 6 versus your Vel'Koz? And Vel'Koz had to push the wave? No. Do you know that Fizz is going to ult the Vel'Koz? Well, yeah, I knew that. Then why aren't you there? That kind of thing. So similar context. So this should be a death to Rek'Sai, especially with no cage now. So the fact that this isn't taken with an E is a travesty. That, again, should be a flash. But it also should be defended. So now that we see Rek'Sai, we can know that this is guaranteed safe. And we need to be able to break this freeze up top lane. Oh, no, it's not freeze. Right, Aatrox push there. All right. Because if we notice, similar concept to the Rek'Sai, we've just been power farming all game. Which isn't necessarily wrong. But it's a matter of, okay, there are times where we need to be able to defend people. There are times where we have the ability to gank that we have actively missed. We've just chosen power farming. Again, not necessarily wrong. The better your laners are, the more this playstyle works. Or also the worse people farm on the opposing team, the better this playstyle works. So similar concept. This is pushed all the way up to turret. Both players are at really, really low mana. This should be don't touch any of this. Go fix their lane. Go fix lane first. We should also be looking mid during this state. Mid also needs fixed. So this is where the laners are 100% at fault. There is no reason for them to be locked in this state. There's also no reason to not recall for 8 minutes of gameplay. We'll get to that later, though. So this 100% needs bailed out before anything else. Then you can clear these 3 camps. Then you can bail out mid. Then you can go back to your top side. That should be the sequence of events here. And then Veigar should just not be burning an excessive amount of mana up until that point. Like, you should be staying in lane and just farming and chilling. So now your bot lane took a reset in a really, really bad state where they're naturally going to be able to lose farm. Mid lane took a bad reset where they're actively going to lose farm as well. You should then take this farm, by the way, because if he's not going to get it, you might as well get it. So we're missing out on that. So it seems like all we're doing is power farming. So similar concept. Both junglers just power farmed. If both junglers just power farmed by 14 or by 15 minutes, I should see 130 farm on this Lilia. I should see approximately 110 to 115 on Rek'Sai. 125, so 15 short of where you need to be. And then Rek'Sai is 30 short of where she should be. We already know why this. This is from desync of camps. This one is from not pathing your camps correctly. Or like kiting them out correctly. So it takes you longer to be able to clear than what you're supposed to be able to do. I also don't know how much of this is lane farm either. So keep that in mind. Because realistically from this point forward, there's no point to look back to be able to see things when it's just constantly the same power clear, power clear, power clear, power clear. Miss the same thing, miss the same thing, miss the same thing. It doesn't serve a purpose anymore. And especially while trying to go faster, this makes a lot of sense. Or it makes a lot of sense to just progress forward. Real quick for the builds. Rek'Sai realistically does go Prowler's Claw, then into generally Edge of Night, especially versus this team, so he can just go through Veigar Cage, for instance. I don't like the Merc Treads. This should be CDR boots. And the reason it should be CDR boots is you're trying to accelerate the game out of control. By the time you get crowd controlled and died is already the time you've fallen off the face of the planet. So that's not what we're trying to accomplish this game. There are games where you can go like Bruiser or Rek'Sai, and your team does scale later on. This is not one of those. And then on the flip side, we already talked about this at the start. This should be Tank Lilia because you're dealing with a bunch of shit that can't deal with tanks. Especially with the lethality misfortune over top of crit. They have no way to deal with tanks. It just doesn't exist. Alrighty. So, on to mid lane. So, with mid lane, this is Vladimir versus Veigar. And one of the important things to note about this matchup is Vladimir cannot puddle through the cage. I've tried it in practice tool. In theory, he should be untargetable and he should be able to go through the cage. In reality, it is counted as terrain. And untargetable people still interact with terrain. Dumb, but is what it is. A couple other tricks that can exist is if Vladimir double taps his E, it sets up the entire backline early game to be able to just be last hit by one turret shot plus one auto attack. So that becomes really, really nice. Vladimir should also be threatening every single time he walks forward with when he gets the empowered Q. So every second Q, he should just be running straight at Vhagar. Just directly at him. Vhagar's mechanics should be, realistically, he wants to be able to trade heavily with Q while taking one farm. If he is just purely farming with Q, he's going to run out of mana, and then Vladimir just gets to abuse the shit out of him. Because remember, hitting Vlad is as good as farming a minion. It's exactly the same AP value. Then also, Vhagar, if he places the middle of his cage inside of a wall, the entire cage is invisible. So it will be a circle like this. That's a bad circle. It would be a circle like this kind of thing, and all of the edges outside of the wall are completely invisible. Where's a fun fact? It's more of a preventative dive measure. So Vhagar stands here, places cage here. People will try to dive on him and then just get stunned and die. It's really funny. Excuse me. It's the same kind of thought process as, like, if Nunu's in a bush and ults, you can't see the ultimate. So if Vhagar middle of cage is invisible, it is invisible. Really, really nice mechanic. So now with this as well, we have the Dark Seal. Already established why this doesn't make any sense. Tier, already established why that doesn't make any sense. So let's look at how the laning phase plays out. So realistically, both sides should be trying to jockey for position to be able to try to get a 3-wave recall, to be able to get a good item back off. And especially Vhagar in particular, because Vhagar has mana that he wants to spam. Right? So if he's not going to be willing to, like, start with the Sapphire Crystal and get a Lost Chapter on wave 6, then he actively has to try to state, I want to be able to be in good states to constantly get resets off, to be able to scale so I can play safe and farm with Q and be happy. Vladimir wants the same thing to an extent, but at level 6 he can create lethal, so he wants to be able to slowly whittle down the economy of Vhagar, so he's forced to take bad resets. So Vlad should want to fight here, and every time Vhagar Qs, he should just be running directly at him. So let's watch this to start. So neither side is actually trying to interact with each other whatsoever. Vladimir is actively hitting the wave, though. Vhagar is not, so naturally the wave is shoving this way. If you want a 3-wave reset in mid lane, what you want to do is have one minion advantage. Just a singular minion. If you have more than that, it ends up pushing too quickly, and then the melees of wave 3 go underneath turret and suicide. And then you're just kind of sad because you don't have enough minions to actually get a reset off and then come back to be able to freeze. So, with this right now, we have the one minion advantage. Vladimir, the second his Q comes off cooldown, wants to be able to run all the way up. But right now, it looks like both sides are just casually farming and relaxing. Yep. So Vladimir really, really wants to pressure out here and wants to be able to use this third Q on Vhagar. There we go. Nice, nice, nice. He missed a minion for it, though, so it should have been melee or auto attack on that, then go for the Q, because he has the bonus movement speed from Empowered. More likely than not, what we're going to end up seeing here is just both sides casually farming it out, and the other side actually pushing or trying to accomplish anything. Because what ends up happening in low elo is everybody just hyper fixates on either A, the wave, or B, the opponent. There's never an in-between. Also, I'm going to turn on my fan. Tell me if you can hear it. I doubt you'll be able to hear it. I think that's okay. Yeah, I think music should be covering that up, because it's just hot in my room. So, with that, right, in low elo, that's generally what ends up occurring. Nothing actually gets done unless someone makes a huge, massive mistake. Right? So, for instance, right now, Vlad should have the ability to play past the wave and actually attack this Vhagar really, really heavily right now. Because he doesn't care about his life. He doesn't care about his mana because it doesn't exist. All he cares about is getting a 3-wave reset off. And the worst thing you can do, whenever you're trying to get a 3-wave reset off, is destroy the wave too early. So if we notice, this wave will come in, this minion will die, and they'll reach right about here. If the neutral wave is right here, that means the casters for the opposing team is right here. So you have to reach this far to be able to finish the 3-wave recall. That also means every melee is from this wave and the next wave is going to suicide. You can't 3-wave recall anymore because of this E. So you traded 134 damage at most for that. Oh no, the cage. Oh, the cage. The cage stopped the minions. So it looks like, yeah, melees won't suicide anymore. So, he screwed up his 3-wave recall. He saved the 3-wave recall by throwing a random cage. As a fun fact on Vhagar, please do not take cage level 2. What are you stunning for? 95 damage? And that's a very big if you're stunning. Compare that to having actual wave clear. Not for hitting the opponent, for a wave clear. The only time you take cage level 2 is if you're afraid of dying. But you should not be afraid of dying. So now, realistically, if you're trying to 3-wave recall, Vladimir should AFK shove this wave so that it crashes, then get a reset off, buy his Dark Seal that would normally exist, because this would normally be a D shield. Instead, in this case, he would buy an Amp Tome, then he would be able to walk back to lane. Veigar doesn't have the wave clear, especially with E level 2, to be able to push it back out. Then he comes back in lane, stronger than Veigar, higher resources than Veigar, and he freezes the wave. And then Rek'Sai ganks, Veigar dies. If we take too long, then wave 4 comes into existence. So we took too long. So now we're basically forced to be able to just play outside the turret. Notice how the Vladimir is just hitting the wave immediately. Because we're hitting the wave immediately, we're just pushing it back into the Veigar immediately, and we're keeping him safe this entire time while putting ourselves at risk. Because remember, being on the opponent's third of the map is super, super spooky. And again, lower elo players tend to not realize how easy it is for them to die because they're not getting punished for it. Similar concept to when we look up top and we can see Gangplank farming underneath the turret happy or assumed happy. But Aatrox at any point in time could have just pressed Alt Q3 dash and he's just dead. At any point in time, for like a full minute and a half of time frame, the Gangplank should have just died. Multiple dives should have been occurring. Multiple ganks should have been occurring. But in reality, if you're not punished for something and you've never seen it before or thought about it, then all of a sudden it doesn't matter. And this is also why players in lower elo get really, really mad whenever they play normals, for instance, and they get ganked a lot, and they're just like, oh, this game is not fun. They're tryharding. In reality, they're just playing normal. Very, very normal. But you're not used to seeing it. So it's something unusual. Oh, excuse me. Need a drink. So with this, right, similar concept. If this is the lane state that's occurring, this can very easily also be a red buff straight into mid lane gank. And he just dies, or is forced to flash. There are many options to be able to play this out, but notice how long he was up there to be able to do something with this. There we go. Now, as well, this ward is an illusion. This ward is absolutely an illusion of safety. This doesn't make any sense. Because realistically, right, first off, your jungler is topside. You want to play towards your jungler for safety, because if a fight happens down here, you're screwed. And you always want to hover your vision, because your vision is what should be making you safe. So now Vladimir wants to play bot pocket because he's placed a ward in bot pocket. Second, we know exactly where Lilia is verbatim. It's on one of two spots right now. Neither of them are bot lane. Because both top laners started in lane. Both top laners started in lane, both bot laners showed up late. 99% of the time, leash was happening here, meaning both junglers are pathing up. If both junglers are pathing up, you've now screwed your Rek'Sai over Skullcrab if they both meet, because you want to hug bot pocket. This ward does absolutely nothing because it will never see anything at any point in time. Then on top of that, right, this also showcases to me that we weren't paying attention to where players were at the start of the game. We have no idea where the jungler is. We are randomly guessing. So we have no idea. Hey, Fox. I did OU tryouts. So if people are willing to give me their time, I give them my time back. So I'm going over a lot of the games to give them information, to be able to see what I see, to be able to help them improve. That's what this is. So anyways, so if we can assume we have no idea where the opposing jungler is because we just placed a ward on the complete wrong side of the map, playing up like this is terrifying now. Because that means we're doing this mindlessly. We're doing this just because we want to position around the Veigar. We're only looking at the Veigar. Veigar is bot pocket, so we play top pocket, so we don't take a Veigar Q. That's the only thought process happening here. And again, that is terrifying. And then the second we place the ward down there, we're now playing towards top pocket again away from our ward. So what purpose does the ward serve? We don't get any happiness. So, anyways. This ward. Couple things to be able to put into perspective, because this is for all mid laners. This ward gives the illusion of safety, because you notice this entire dark spot? Yeah, Lily is better to gank through here than to gank through here, so you gave her the better gank route. But again, low elo players don't take this route, even though it's better, and it's farther behind the Vladimir than right here. Because would you rather, excuse me, would you rather be seen here, or would you rather be seen here when the wave is pushed up? It's definitely here, right? Because you're much farther behind them, you can cut them off so much easier. Just straight up better, and you're even farther forward, right? Second, if you're placing this ward has to be here. The reason this ward has to be here is because it sees exactly the same amount of vision, because notice how this isn't turning the corner at all, so when you place it here, this also won't turn the corner at all, because it won't go through walls. But it's easier to defend. If someone places a pink ward here, and then starts clearing your ward, they can clear it from right here if they're a ranged champion. You can't defend it. It's not possible. So this ward is defendable. Second, if you're looking for better wards, if you want him in the bot side, you can place it here if you think the jungler is going to come this direction. You can place it here, and now all of a sudden, this entire area right here is covered. And also the reason you place it in this corner of the pixel brush is because if you place it even just to right here, this is now a dead spot that junglers can use. Future reference. So you place it right at the edge, and all of a sudden you've controlled this entire area. But isn't that what this is supposed to be controlling? But this is even more preemptive. So this ward does literally nothing. The only thing this ward does is either get you killed because you think you're safe, or if like a Rakan or a J4 goes over the wall this way, trying to avoid this ward. That's all that ward does. It's the illusion of safety. Wards are the illusion of safety the majority of the time. Similar concept, please place it in this corner right here. And then also, if you want to know exactly where the jungler is, and you just need to see them, instead of placing it down here, you could have also just, you know they're somewhere up top, just walk up and place it here. This ward will be able to see whether or not this raptor pit is gone. If it is gone, we know for a fact he's still topside. Done. Has just as much value. And you could have done it from standing right here as well if you wanted to just place it to be able to see raptor pit. So the best ward that you could have placed would have been right there. That way you'll see Lilia come through here. You will see Lilia come through here. You will see Lilia come through here. The only thing you won't see is if Lilia comes through all the way around, which is a very, very tiny likelihood. Much, much better ward placement. So now we're playing incredibly safe, and realistically, all we're doing is AFK shoving into Veigar, and we're not actually accomplishing anything. So here's the fun part. This is what I love to talk about. I just backed way too far in my chair. This is what I love to talk about whenever there's a difference between annoying and useful. If someone is going to AFK push into you constantly, let them. Just let them. If this Vlad is going to off cooldown, hit the wave, just farm under turret. Don't burn any of your resources. Just chill. Why do you have to hard push it back out unless there's a play being made immediately? That's not required. Just relax. Do nothing. And chill. We don't have to spam the wave out with W's. We don't have to spam out the waves with Q's. Farm under turret. And relax. Excuse me. Because if you notice, Vlad is perma-spamming this wave out. So why do we have to spam back? Why do we have to use Cage here? I'll talk about that even more so in a second. But the fact that Veigar is so low on mana with such little interaction with the Vladimir is literally just because he feels the need to be able to spam out the wave because Vladimir is spamming out the wave. But in reality, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't accomplish anything. So this annoying has now become useful because the Veigar has no idea how to deal with pressure. Just relax. The times where your job in mid lane is to be able to shove in the wave. Or sorry, let me rephrase this. I'm going to phrase it the same way I did yesterday. Your job in mid lane is to destroy the opponent's economy so that they do not have the ability to rotate whenever you are rotating, and that rotation must happen during a play. And you can destroy the opponent's economy through a multitude of different resources. Right? So you can attack their health pool. You can attack their mana pool. You can attack their wave state. So if you slow push a wave and crash it, they have to deal with it. You can attack their cooldowns. So if they use their wave clear ability on you, you use your wave clear ability on the wave. Now you can rotate. They can't. That works. You can take resets that give you an economy advantage so that you have better items than them so that they can't fight you. If they can't fight you, you can manipulate the wave however you want. If you can manipulate the wave however you want, you can set it up for the rotation, right? But everything should be trying to serve a purpose, right? So if he's going to AFK shove constantly with no plays occurring anywhere on the map, no rotations occurring anywhere on the map, it's just annoying. You make annoying useful by spamming out constantly to try to match the annoying when it's not accomplishing anything, thinking you need to do something, but you don't. Or similar context, right? If this Vladimir wanted to burn the last of your mana pool, and he wants to attack your mana so that you have no ability to manipulate the wave anymore, the way he would do it is he would just fight you. Either your options are lose life for nothing, or trade your mana for some of his life. Now you can't clear the wave plus the Vlad. So Vlad sitting back just wave clearing is one of the worst things he can do because he's just letting the Veigar scale. If Veigar doesn't want to use mana here, Veigar doesn't have to use mana. Nothing's occurring. So you want to be able to save your mana for whenever something is actually occurring. Because even now, let's say Vladimir just wants to sit outside of your turret the entire time, and Lilia shows up. You barely have enough mana for one rotation. Doesn't do anything. Excuse me. You can try to cage him, but that's the best you can do, and then you bring no damage up. But he could sit in the middle of cage and just wait it out and then walk away. But this stems from the difference between annoying and useful. Right? So now the argument could potentially stem as Veigar, I want to be able to stack up my Q. That's fine. If you want to stack up your Q, stack up your Q. But that doesn't mean you should be using Ws. That doesn't mean you should be using Es. Because this is 35 mana. You have 900 mana. Does this go down with rank or up? This goes up with rank. So 35 mana is higher, right? You have 941 mana that you could potentially use, right? You have 177 left. To put into perspective, let me just pull out a calculator real quick. And this time I will not use my number pad because I will remember that, right? So, 941 minus 177 divided by 35. You could have had 23 Qs in this lane at this stage in the game right now. 23 Qs. Or 22, sorry. If you're stating you needed 22 Qs to farm, you better have like 40 AP at this point in the game. Not 19. So we're clearly over spamming on other stuff. It's not just Qs. Not by a long shot. Right. So then now you're into a state where, let's back this up, because now literally all that's occurred is just constantly AFK shoving both ways. Like right there, we got one minion for 35 mana and we missed the second step autoing this and then getting both. So we're missing a lot of farm just naturally. Right. Now we're into a state where, again, your economy is so completely destroyed. Like this W, what purpose does this serve? We could have just walked up and autoed that minion. You have high life. Trade life for... you can trade life for minions, or you can trade mana for minions. If you're high life, trade your life for it. That's fine. Especially if you're low mana. But now you're in a state where you have no ability to fight whatsoever, and you have no ability to create lethal, you have no ability to manipulate the wave. Basically, you're forced to reset at this point, right? So this is really, really important to be able to note. Whenever you're attacking resources, there are different ways to attack resources, right? So if you want to attack someone's mana pool, you can shove the wave right before a play, and they have to shove back. Because they want to be able to make sure that that play doesn't work for you. So like if a top lane dive is about to occur, they need 3 people to do it. One mid lane shoves, the other mid lane responds and shoves and tries to rotate after them. Right? That's an option. Another way is just fight the opponent. If you fight the opponent, they're forced to use mana to be able to deal with you. That works. You can also over auto attack the wave so that they are forced to use mana to be able to fix that problem. That's more of a mistake on their part, but those things exist, right? So what you have to do as a mid laner for mana consumption is state that I have the ability to get a reset off or kill my opponent before I run out of mana. If that is not a possibility anymore, one of those two is not a possibility anymore, you must either take a reset or call for assistance. You do not have an option in the matter. Because the Veigar right now, if Vlad just wanted to leave the lane and go roam, you can W this and you can Q this and you're out of mana. That's it. If Vlad fights you one more time, you're out of this lane anyways. So Vlad realistically should be playing all the way past the wave, forcing the last of your mana out and making you miss all these minions anyways. If you're missing these minions anyways, why does it matter if you recall now or later? Besides the fact that you get back on the map sooner. So you can get more farms sooner. Doesn't make sense. So this cage doesn't make sense either. Just take the damage, keep your mana. It doesn't matter. You have high enough life. And now Cord is here. But again, you've spammed so much for basically no result. You have 23 stacks on your passive and that's it. That's really low. Excuse me. For how much mana you actively used. Right. And now that we're back in a lane state, we want to be able to use as little resources as possible to get as much as possible and keep ourselves in a state in which case we have the ability to rotate. Realistically, I talked about this yesterday as well. If your thought process is, I want to be able to kill the opponent in mid lane, that's just a straight up wrong thought process. It will occur randomly when the opponents make massive mistakes, but for the most part, it will not occur. It just won't. Okay? And that's because any lane... Excuse me, get off my screen. Any lane that is losing on your side, the opposing team will have the ability to rotate mid. And then every time the jungler swaps from one quadrant to the other, they will look mid. Every time they finish their clear, they will look mid. How do you kill an opponent when they get help every 30 seconds or less? They have to screw up so badly for that to occur. It's insane. So your thought process should be to assist your team as much as possible because you're in the mid lane. Your job is to be able to rotate around. You are closest to everything. If you want to just sit here and just be able to fight the opponents, top lane is your role. Now, with this, again, everything should be done with a purpose. So when we hop back into lane, the wave is shoving into the opponents, right? If the wave is shoving into the opponents, we want to be able to rotate when this crashes to either be able to defend someone, take a reset, right? Take a dragon, do something with it. Not just sit outside their turret. Not just do nothing. We want something to occur, right? So let's think about this, right? Every action we have to do with a purpose. We have not a fucking clue where Rek'Sai is. We are playing on the opposite side from where our ward is. And to top it off, one additional thing, we just burn Cage with having no idea where anybody is. So if our thought process is we want to rotate to be able to assist a play, there's no play that's occurring. We don't have to fast push this. There's nothing that's occurring. Right? If our thought process is let's burn some resources to hurt the Vlad, we're a 25 farm Vagar at 6 minutes with Tear, a Sapphire Crystal, and an Amp Tome. We're not killing this Vlad. We're not even chunking him out. If you hit every ability on this Vladimir, 3 Qs later, he's full life. Or this one empowered Q on you because you're point blank. Yeah, let's say you landed Q there and he Q'd you instead of a minion, which again, heavily reduced on minions. It's reduced to 30%. He lost 70% of the healing here. So this should be like a 200 heal. So even if you did land Cage, you did land your W, you did land Q, you got 3 AP for a large chunk of mana and all of your safety. That's it. That's all that was accomplished. When you have resources, you have to play a resource management game. You cannot just throw things out willy-nilly. It's not how things work. The second you face someone competent, it doesn't work anymore. So now, because you burned all of your resources on him, how do you push the wave? Doesn't seem to be working. Again, this is where also he should just be going in. You should be burning Flash or dying here. All of this state is literally caused by just having this need to spam out abilities constantly. When at any point in time, all you have to do to be able to fix this thought process is think, why am I doing this? Just add the why to the thought process, right? And when you have the why, then you start thinking about the next conclusion. So for instance, when we go back to that Cage, which I think happens here, right? Why are we throwing out Cage here? Well, it's because I want to fight the Vladimir. Why do you want to fight the Vladimir? Well, it's because I want to damage him. Why do you want to damage him? To kill him. Then we go to the final step of, can you kill him? No. And you can realize you can't kill him by just looking at the numbers. Even in-game, if you've never played a champion before, follow that thought process, look at what their damage numbers look like, and then you can still come to the conclusion right after that play and then never do it again. Easy to fix. Excuse me. So in similar concept, there's no reason to be able for Vladimir to be able to shove this out. It's level 6 to level 5. Rek'Sai's right here. Just play past the wave. Just play past the wave. What happens if Lilia shows up from anywhere? You just take the 2v2 fight and win. So this E is one of the worst things that can possibly be done because now we've just broken the freeze. Similar concept. Why are we caging? Rek'Sai's literally right here. Rek'Sai has not burned E yet. Can burn E right there, and now you have no way to stop her. Rek'Sai should immediately turn back. The second cage gets blown. Turn around. Screw your camps. Go kill. But now we burn Cage. We burn Q. We can't walk forward. We have to chill. And we're just missing such an extended amount of farm because we're not auto-attacking and we're always putting ourselves on the back foot because we're just spamming out abilities randomly. Same concept with like the gangplank up top where we just have a barrel in the middle of the wave and then we pop it. Now all minions are just horrendous random values. And we just start losing minions and losing minions and losing minions. Similar concept, right? We have full life. We have half mana. There's no play being made anywhere here. Why do we have to WQ this? Why don't we just auto-attack them? Or why don't we back off, wait for this to end, while these minions are still high life, because no minion has the chance of dying here. These minions are all very, very healthy. Why do we have to be this close? Just back away. Just wait it out. None of these minions will die if you back away and let his red bar go away. Just relax. You constantly feel like you have to do something. You have all this burden. You have to fight him. You don't. You have now burned up 2/3 of your mana for this much damage on Vlad, and you fought him, what, 3 or 4 times now? You have killed yourself 3 times as well, because Rek'Sai's even been near, and if Rek'Sai's paying attention, you're just dead. We end up running into this massive problem where you're not accomplishing anything. So similar concept. This is now 4th or 5th fight. And Vladimir just gets one empowered Q off and the fight's over. So why are we trying to kill him? If it didn't work the first 4 times, why is it trying to work the 5th time? So again, this is something where a lot of players, when they have this problem, it's literally because they've just played casually. And it's fine. If you're not making money from something, play it for fun. Absolutely. But then when we're trying to win and we're trying to figure out like who is the best in these roles and who is going to be the best to work with, if a player has never contemplated why, then we start running into an issue of, well, then how do I start explaining the why to them? I have to start from square one. And this is why also some people become higher ranks faster than others with no assistance. Some people ask why. Some people say, I want to do it. And less learning occurs. So realistically, I can speed through this laning phase. It's going to be exactly the same thing on repeat. We run out of mana. We have to take a bad reset. We run out of mana. We have to take a bad reset. We run out of mana. We have to take a bad reset. Let's see it. I'm just letting it go, by the way. Oh, random fight. So they are on dragon. Who gets 3 kills? Red side? Okay. Just way too much damage from dragon. Fantastic. Okay. So we were just rewarded with just random kills. Because the opponents made a mistake. Because the opponents are playing on the wrong side of the map. Because remember, Rek'Sai is supposed to be helping top side significantly. Bot side is a Zillion. Zillion did not even press R. Zillion have R? Zillion had R. Zillion did not press R. On 2 people. Before he died. Oh, I don't think exhaust was used either up until super, super late. We'll touch on that later. Yeah, so at this point it should just be a disengage and they don't know where to disengage. Alright, no, exhaust was used at the right time. Okay. But anyways, back to mid lane. So realistically, that's all that was occurring. And then again, we're rewarded for a random fight. This wasn't anything of, like, either mid laners doing. It's just rewarded for existing and letting everybody else do the work. Which is a similar concept to what was happening in lane, right? Vlad shoves wave. Doesn't care about attacking the mana pool. Doesn't care about rotating anywhere. Doesn't care about helping anyone else. Doesn't do anything, right? And then Vhagar needs to push wave at all points in time. Burns up all of his mana to constantly do it. Because he feels the need that he, like, compelled that he has to do it. And then runs out of mana, takes bad reset. Runs out of mana, takes bad reset. And then we're down to near 5 farm a minute. What was that? 6? 7? I think it's 7. Yeah, that's very close to 7. That's very close to 7. But in a lane where the Vhagar never dropped you below a quarter life and we're only at 7 farm a minute with near 0 rotations, something's gone very, very wrong there. Because you've had all the ability in the world. That means you've missed almost all farm organically. Like, it's just happened. So this becomes a very, very massive red flag for both sides. Because neither side seems to understand, like, mid lane wants to roam. Mid lane wants to be able to attack different things. Mid lane does not want to kill themselves. Not kill themselves. Kill the opponents. So we don't understand the mid lane role. That's fine. That's what we're touching on. Second thing is, neither side knows how to wave manipulate. Neither side knows their kill thresholds. And then Vhagar in particular believes that all this fighting is required to be able to function. Like, there is a lethal somewhere. But at no point in time after 6 attempts did the Vlad even drop below, like, 3/4 life. So if we're never dropping below 3/4 life, there is no lethal present there. Even if you hit your stuff, it's not even close. Excuse me. So similar concept. We're caging the Vlad there because he's just not going to crash this next wave and reset. That's hilarious. Do we have E up? Okay, so we're waiting on next Q. That's why. Nice. Good play. That's the first proactive play I've seen in 12 minutes. That's the first one to occur. And remember, the only way to die in mid lane is to make a massive mistake. So what was the massive mistake here? We have half-life, tanked the wave, got down to a quarter life, and then we're still attempting to fight at a quarter life. We're still attempting to fight at a quarter life. You have to... That's how much of a mistake it has to be. Because also, the Lilia could have just come in, or came and fixed your wave and forced the Vladimir back. So you just have to wait literally 2 seconds before walking up. 2 seconds and you get out of there alive. Perfectly fine. It's just interesting with little things like that. So I'm going to look at the 15-minute mark. I'm going to look at farms, and then that's the last thing. Because it's going to be the same mistakes over and over and over again. Which is fine. Also, Night Harvester on Vlad is troll. I talked about it in depth last stream. So if you want to look that up and look up in mid lane of why this does not make any sense whatsoever, you are welcome to. So 88 at 15 minutes was that 5.5? I think that's 5.5. So Vhagar, as a side note, is a 10 farm a minute or bust champion. Can't be on the functional curve without 10 farm a minute. Vladimir, similar concept, especially in uncontested lane. So this is what, 6.8? Somewhere close to that? Because I know 120 is 7. So we're close to functional, but we had to have a completely uncontested lane and one rotation the entire game for it. Not the best, but functional. Better. Then we look at both bot lanes with functional farm. I'm excited for that. All right, into bot lane. So bot lane, realistically, we have Sivir Nami, which can be very devastating with Sivir's Qs and Nami's E's, along with quite a bit of sustain to be able to go through the poke. On the flip side, Pokey and Pokey, with Zilean having a really, really bad laning phase. So what we're looking at here, which more likely than not, we're going to see a lot of the same problems as we did last stream, where the supports just didn't know how to fight. We didn't look to try to create 2-on-1 scenarios. It was just kind of existing for the most part, right? So looking at once Sivir burns Q, for instance, now all of a sudden these two should want to fight, want to get in Sivir's face, want to push her back. But we're just existing. Similar concept as well. Support should want to be in bush control, trying to push them back. So both supports should be in bush control. Both AD carries should be in middle pocket, hovering slightly towards bot pocket so they don't get hit by skill shots. With an oddball of Misfortune loves to be able to walk back and forth based on what ability she started. Misfortune is one of the few champions in the entire game that instead of kiting back and forth while farming, she goes side to side. And the reasoning for that is you're constantly setting up your double tap on minions. So when Sivir would walk this way, Misfortune would walk this way, and just kind of constantly mirror it. Instead of wanting to like stay here as Misfortune or as Sivir walks here, tries to attack it. Because that way she can get uncontestable trades. With E start, however, that's vastly different. So now, similar concept. With Sivir burning Q, it becomes cooldowns to no cooldowns. You should be able to hard fight. The second this bomb gets thrown in the bush, it becomes no cooldown to no cooldown, and there's no fight, nothing happens. But Sivir has infinitely more wave clear. So Sivir should be on the winning side of this. So now, the entire reason that these two aren't moving up is literally just play around the bushes. Just play around the bushes. If you play with each other and around the bushes, you're allowed to walk up pretty freely here. Because also, Misfortune's E cooldown is long. It's very, very long in early states. So in this case, it's 18. I couldn't remember after the nerfs or not. Or like what it was after the nerfs. Zilean Bomb cooldown, it's damaged. Also on a long cooldown. It's not stunned yet. Doesn't do anything. Just annoying. Remember, there's a difference between annoying and good. So, now all of a sudden, Nami should want to be able to press forward to be able to actually start attacking this when Zilean gets here. Both of them, if they're in correct position, so Nami here in this bush, Sivir even being right here, they both should be able to attack the Zilean pretty freely. I also haven't looked at what abilities everybody started. Heal is correct, but we're not trading with the heal. Side note, Nami wants to be able to trade really, really heavily level 1 because she trades and then she heals or damages them and then bounces back for a heal to her. Or if it's a losing trade for her, she pops on herself and then damages the opponents with it. Whichever it hits first is the highest, then second highest is next, and then third highest, so forth, right? As a diminishing returns effect. So you get to determine who gets more healing and who gets more damage based on like how the trade's going. But you want to trade, especially when, again, Misfortune E is on cooldown, but we're just not attacking it. And we're just letting people exist. Nothing's actually occurring here. And now, Misfortune is the only one actually hitting the wave. And remember, in all lanes, whoever hits level 2 first wins. Just straight up. You just bum rush the opponents. Right? Unless something magical happened level 1, or it's really, really close on when you two hit level 2, or like both sides hit level 2. Basically, whoever hits level 2 first wins. So Sivir initially queued the wave, and then just kind of stopped hitting it. Nami has not touched the wave to be able to try to fix this, to be able to hit level 2 first. Zilean has not hit the wave to be able to assist this whatsoever. It's just been Misfortune hitting. Right. Now, on top of that, this minion right here, that's level 2. So something that's really, really important to talk about for lower elos is when you guys hit level 2. It's super, super important. So for top and mid lane, again, I talked about this previously, but it's the first wave plus 1 melee, or it is 5 minions in a wave plus 1 melee. Either one works, because melees are worth more experience. In bot lane, it is first full wave plus 3 melees, or first full wave plus 2 melees and 2 casters. This is second wave. This is the last minion of the second wave. Red side has this minion, this minion, this minion, and this minion, and this minion to chunk through before they hit level 2. That's how one-sided this push is. The fact that these two don't realize that they can walk all the way up to the opponents and just kill them shows that they don't know when they hit level 2. Because both of them should already be all the way up. All the way up. The fact that either of them are even remotely close to behind is insane. So, for instance, right now, both parties should just run directly at the opponents and then just last hit the minions from here. If they choose to fight, that's fine. We're thrilled with that. Especially right now. So now this leads into a bigger problem here. So awareness of situations is massive, 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 massive in this game because of how many different champions there are. 1 second, Adrian. So when the awareness of the situation is so low that the wave is pushing away from you and we're warding a bush that's about to be behind us, that is a massive red flag that we don't know what's going on. Because we can all kind of look at this and after a little bit kind of establish, okay, this is the neutral line of scrimmage where it's like if neither side has any minions, that's where the melees touch, right? And remember, if there are minions, like the new line of scrimmage is over here, it will naturally push away. If the new line of scrimmage is here, it will naturally push away, right? And this is because the new wave comes in first, and then gives a bunch of additional damage to be able to cause that, right? Then you also have to take into consideration how many minions there are, right? Because the more minions there are, the more it's going to push that way. So when the neutral line of scrimmage is here, right, approximately, it's very close to that. The line of scrimmage is right here, so it's naturally pushing this way if minions are exactly neutral. We are 5 minions up on blue side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That one. So 4 minions up. Now 5 minions up, and we're warding this. In no world does it ever push into us here. In no world does Nami ever walk into that bush, or Sivir walk into that bush, or the Lilia walk into that bush. That has no ability to ever occur. So if that has no ability to ever occur, either A, we're placing a ward without the knowledge of the wave state, or B, we're not paying attention to the wave state whatsoever. Which then, knowing that we're not playing forward when we're about to hit level 2, we're about to see which one that is. If we see the Zillion not walk forward whatsoever, we can understand that we don't understand what's going on. We don't understand the spikes. We don't understand the current context of the situation. We are kind of lost. If we do walk forward to be able to fight here and push them all the way off the wave, we can understand that, okay, we just weren't paying attention here. Nope, we are still playing behind the misfortune the entire time, never walked past the wave, never tried to attack anyone. We don't know what's going on. And that's okay. So this is what ends up occurring, right? When you're about to hit level 2, you want to be able to fight, especially when it's this one-sided. The support, whenever you are behind in wave state, wants to be able to assist the AD carry in fixing lane state. So that way you can still hit level 2 first, right? And you don't overhelp so it doesn't over-push, right? You generally want to be 1 minion in advance, or 1 minion ahead of the opponents, right? So right now, for instance, additional minion. Blue side is up 2 minions. Blue side should technically not be hitting this wave whatsoever, and just walk at them. They're already up too much. In side lanes, it's less important than in mid lanes to be exactly 1 minion ahead. But that's a good spot. This is a pretty okay spot. So then anytime Sivir hits the wave, we hit the wave. Hi, Rush. I am on your spot right now. So then, whenever Sivir hits the wave, we would want to hit the wave to be able to match. And then during downtime, we would just want to attack them. Because if we can zone them off level 1 because we know we're going to hit level 2 first, then all of a sudden, they're just going to back away. And if they do take a trade and we trade relatively neutral, then we hit level 2 first. Now the lane is super, super volatile, but the opponents can never walk forward. So it's not actually volatile. Except for if the opponents want to die. Right. So with this, right, we don't want to bomb here. We don't want to do anything with this wave. All we want to do is walk past the opponents, or past the wave, and make it so that the opponents don't have the ability to play the game. And now, granted as well, this has context where it's like, okay, you're a Senna versus a Nautilus, and you're trying to walk past the wave. Level 1, they can absolutely just straight up kill you. So be aware of that. In this context, it's double enchanters. So we want to be able to push past the wave. We want to be able to make their lives hard. And even if it was the Senna in that context, so Senna versus Nautilus, we don't want to push past the wave, but we still want to push them back as far as possible and make their lives as hard as possible, because we're still going to hit 2 first, right? And once 2 lands, we should both just be straight up past the wave, because they still need to clear these 3 minions, plus 1 of these to be able to hit level 2. They are incredibly far off of level 2. So the fact that we're just pushing the wave instead of actively playing forward is inherently a problem. Because notice as well how we just crashed this wave and now they just hit level 2 for free. This is the over pushing problem. Okay. And similar concept as well. We're trying to hard crash this wave, when in reality we have to think about, okay, what does hard crashing this wave actually cause? Right? So if we let the wave push into us on blue side, red side will hit level 2 first. Or sorry, level 3 first. Because blue side minions will die before red side minions, then they'll be level 3 outside of your turret, and they can look for a crash. Right? On that crash, they can look for a reset. If we decide to AFK shove this wave, we're basically trying to make the waves neutral. That way it comes back into the middle of the lane, and then we can determine from there whether we want to zone out, whether we want to slow push back in, whether we want to invade during the downtime. We have a lot of different options. So here, AFK pushing is correct. And then once the new wave comes in, we should not be AFK pushing anymore. It's not the fact that we're not AFK pushing and we're just kind of chilling. And we're also playing really, really far back when we have cooldowns is inherently a problem. Because now we get to play another rotation of we're on their side of the map and we can't fight them. So now we push again. Okay, now the wave is neutral. The problem is we've been in a winning state on blue side the entire time. We've had the advantage. We've had all the ability to do whatever we want in the world. And all we've gained for it is we've lost half the mana on misfortune. For that. That's it. That's all that's occurred. Oh, one additional potion was used. One potion was used. Which potion did not need to be used if we're full life here. So that was a bad potion usage. That's all we've gained through all of this because we're not willing to actually fight the opponents. We're just hitting the wave and hitting the wave and hitting the wave and just kind of existing. And that's really important to be able to note. I'm going to look at red side here in a second too. So now with this wave in control, right? With both of them being full life, there is now no way for these two to be able to create lethal without jungle assistance. So our job should be then, okay, we want to be able to hit the opponents as much as possible without using mana. If we do use mana, it better be for a very, very high value reason, because Nami still has full mana and can heal. And there's still 2 potions on Nami as well. Then, on top of that, we want to deny as many minions as possible, because we're still a misfortune, right? We're still pretty strong. There's one player on that. So this E then makes no sense. Bombing the wave then makes no sense. Queuing the wave makes no sense. We're running into exactly the same problem as everybody else. We're just pushing the wave to push the wave. We're not trying to accomplish anything. We're not trying to attack their resources. We tried to double bomb the Sivir, but Sivir has spell shield, Nami has heal. We can always just go back on that chain of thought and start asking the why questions, and eventually we get to that point of, well, why are we attacking them? Well, it's to get them lower. Why are we trying to get them lower? To kill them. Can we kill them? No. There's no lethal here before we run out of mana because we've over-spammed so much on the wave. Excuse me. And see now how we've just gotten into this issue of the E is just annoying because the E build has died partially, and partially because we have tier, partially because we've overspammed the wave very, very heavily, so we don't have any oomph. So now we're just kind of throwing out abilities to throw out abilities, and notice how we've been gankable on blue side for a really long time. And red side has not been gankable a single time this game, because all we keep doing is just shoving and shoving and shoving and shoving and shoving and shoving and shoving. And this works in solo queue versus junglers who do not have a brain. This works in solo queue versus bot lanes that do not have a brain. And the reason I state that is because there are players, like for instance what happens in mid lane with the Veigar, who just try to match you. Who state, oh, you're pushing my wave? I'm going to push the wave back and I'm going to use all my resources to do it. When you start playing with people who start when you start thinking about the game, they just state, okay, you're being annoying. That's it. You're annoying. I'll wait for my jungler to come down. I will ping them to come. They will come break us out of this hell. After first recall, we can now fight back. Everything that you did previous to that was just annoying. And we can even see that there's quite a large farm discrepancy. When I look back at red side here in a minute, we're probably going to see a lot of Nami not helping with the wave. Because helping last hit under turret is something that supports are required to do. Or else this kind of AFK push strategy becomes better and better, which, again, in solo queue has more value. Because people are worse. People have not learned. So now, again, all we're doing with no mana, no nothing, is we're just shoving the wave constantly. What at any point in time stops these two from just running directly past the wave and just fighting the misfortune with no mana? Just igniting her and going. Nothing. There's literally nothing. These two should run these two all the way back to turret because there's no way a Zillion is deterring that fight. There's no way. Let me just double check all summers. Yeah, everything's up. There is no way a misfortune with no mana can fight that and function. Especially with Comet over top of PTA. There's nothing left. So when someone's out of gas, we're still not going. We're still not trading. We're still not doing anything. Oh, I bonked my mouse, and now the side isn't working, and I need that for Epic Pen. There we go. All right. But yeah, so in all reality, when we're looking at what has been accomplished this game, this support has AFK, or sorry, this AD carry has AFK shoved and not really touched the opponents besides minor instances of annoyance. This support has done nothing whatsoever. Nothing has been accomplished. If anything, he has hurt the lane more than helped it, between random ward, that does not help, random bombs that have screwed up the wave more, and have technically given them opportunities to be able to fight. Then from there, he's generally standing directly next to the AD carry, letting double bombs happen or letting bounces happen. Excuse me. Comparatively to getting bush control and fighting back in some way, so he's not even providing any pressure. Nothing has actually occurred there. And on the flip side, so far, which from what I've seen, I'm going to watch Red Side again in a second, Nami has done absolutely nothing. There has been no trading. There has been no assisting of farm underneath turret. Going to double check on that one. But there has been bush control. There has been existence. Because notice how now all of a sudden these two are playing up here because bush control. They can't just walk magically forward with Nami in the bush without forcing her out of the bush. But there's no mana to force her out of the bush. There's no attempt to force her out of the bush from the Zillion. No bombs to be able to give vision, to be able to force them out. Nothing. The fact that Misfortune is out of mana, Nami is out of mana, and Sivir is out of mana, and then Zillion is full mana, is just... I'd be curious to see how much even support... I can check real quick. It is 129 and 109. There's literally nothing going on from either support. Neither one is playing. They're just existing. And it's because of this, right? Where they're just... Nothing's actually happening. But again, with basically no mana, very low mana, and full mana, that also showcases how much more can be done throughout the laning phase. Excuse me. Because even we could walk up and we could slow people, we could start auto-attacking, we can use bombs to be able to stun off of that. We can do something, but we have the ability to even force the Nami out of bushes, and we're not even doing that. Nothing is actually occurring. And neither support is actually trading. Because to put into perspective, right? If we get... How much gold is passive off of this? 2 gold per 10 seconds. Okay. So let's pull out a calculator. We are actually going to figure out how many times each support has traded. As a fun fact. Because it's one difference, correct? Yeah, it's literally one auto attack difference. So let's get to exactly 6 minutes. Okay, exactly 6 minutes we have now ticked over. So this doesn't start up until 2 minutes, I believe. Because it doesn't start giving you gold for a little bit. So I believe it's the 2 minute marker. Because that's when passive... I'm pretty sure that's when passive gold generation starts. Hi, Brent. So. Hold on. We're getting there. So, yeah. There's been 4 minutes of play. Right? So, then 60 divided... Wait. My brain is dying. Yeah. So, it'd be 24 instances of 2. So, it'd be 48 gold, right? That doesn't make logical sense. Hold on. Am I literally just doing mental math wrong? Am I being dumb here? Yeah, but then 48 gold wouldn't make sense of why it's a flat number. So it'd have to be one additional tick. Oh, because it would have to start from... Okay. So it starts from 140, not 2 minutes. Now we figured out the... Or no, sorry, from 150, not 2 minutes. That's the 2 gold discrepancy. So if it's given 48 gold... Or sorry, 50 gold, right? We can look at these. We have 80 gold here. You have interacted with the opponents 4 times this entire laning phase in 6 minutes. On the flip side, we have interacted 3 times with the opponents in 6 minutes. So we have 4 auto attacks and 3 auto attacks, basically. That's all that has occurred in 6 minutes of play from both supports. That is nothing. That is 0. That is health regen levels of low. Health regen beats out the damage that both supports have done. So then why is everybody out of mana? Because we just shoved waves and we did nothing. Absolutely nothing. No auto attack trading, no abusiveness, no nothing. Nothing has actually occurred in this lane. But yet, all of a sudden now, we have this farm lead. And this farm lead comes from literally just farming underneath turrets. But the fact that neither support has probably even auto attacked each other and has just been through random long range abilities is also insane. Because of how many times you can auto-attack. Because, for instance, every time an AD carry goes for an auto-attack, kind of like what we talked about in top lane, where you root yourself in place whenever you auto-attack. If that's happening and supports in this bush, they can take 1 step out, auto-attack, go back in the bush whenever the AD carry goes for an auto-attack. Every time an AD carry touches a minion, they should be being abused in some way. If they're not being abused, it's because the support is defending them from being abused. So if Nami's here, Misfortune's here, Support is, or Zillion's here, Nami steps out of the bush to be able to go attack Misfortune. Zillion should immediately slow double bomb and they just all enter. That's what I mean by having the ability to defend. So that stops Nami from being able to auto attack the Misfortune. Then all of a sudden Nami goes up here to be able to auto attack and so on and so forth. There are different ways to be able to play around it. But literally nothing has been occurring. And everybody's out of mana. It's really bad. If we watch both supports, they're literally just playing behind their AD carry doing nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then AD carries are just AFK shoving the waves back and forth. Nothing is actually occurring. There is no functionality here. There is nothing to work with either. Because both sides are doing so little, there's nothing to actually talk about. Because I can talk about positioning and how to trade and things like that. But there's not even trading occurring. We are literally dancing in a tryout. For how long was that? For 15 seconds, we did absolutely nothing, which is exactly the same as the previous 9 minutes of play. So if that's the context, we're running into an issue. Because to put into perspective, this Spell Thieves is normally completed from 1,000 gold at about 11 minutes. Yes. We do a little trolling. But the thing to keep in mind, Raj, as well, is when we're at tryouts, this is a little different from a normal thing. Because also, the way I treat tryouts is basically a job interview for all intents and purposes. It was the thing I said, like in person that day. Because this has been my job for the past 4 years. So whenever I'm picking a team, I'm picking people who are basically employees. Like, granted as well, you guys don't get paid. There are no scholarships to my knowledge. So if that's the context as well, things are naturally going to be a little more relaxed. But where I'm looking at tryouts in particular, this is the most professional any player should be. This is the most tryhard any player should be at any point in time, right? So for instance, in game 1, match 1, where the red side was just laughing and dicking around and then lost the game, I remember they were laughing and dicking around and lost the game. So then when I also see their laning faces were atrocious, there's no excuse anymore for that. Because this should be the most professional they should be. This should be the most tryhard they should be. And yet that's what I got. So similar concept. When I see nothing occurring in a lane phase to the point where I'm ready to go to the next game because I can't even talk about this, and then we're dancing, I remember that. Excuse me. There's so many things that need to be accomplished here comparatively to what's actually being done, right? So we could have gotten bush control, we could have gone to go ward, we could have rotated into mid lane to be able to defend while the Misfortune is getting solo experience, because experience on the AD carry is worth more than the support generally, especially when you're Zillion and you can just give out support or experience anyways. So once you hit level 6, you're fine. You're severely past 6. There's so much more that could have been done there comparatively. And that's important to be able to note. But again, on both sides, we're just AFK pushing the wave. I'm going to look back at red side real quick, and then this game is just a dud. There's nothing to be gained from bot lane whatsoever. Because basically the best advice I could possibly give for both bot lanes is just go look up a YouTube video on how to play the game. Because it's so low quality that nothing is occurring. And again, mostly from the supports. The supports are just not existing. The AD carries, however, there is something to actually be able to take from this at a bare minimum. Where both AD carries have to state, we want to be able to put our wave into a state to be able to accomplish something instead of just AFK shoving it constantly. And then on top of that, look for the level 2 spike. Level 2 spike is massive. But beyond that, it's just AFK shove after AFK shove after AFK shove. Neither side is interacting with each other or wants to interact with each other. Neither side is doing anything. It's just existing. We're just basically going through the motions. It's like playing Tetris without looking at what piece is coming down. You're just kind of throwing them places. Same exact concept. So where did we lose all the mana? And I'm going to look to see if we last hit underneath turret correctly. Or assist to last hitting. Because maybe that could be something to be able to get out of this that you wouldn't find in a base YouTube video. Hopefully the rest of the games get better too. Yeah, so like Sivir, for instance, doesn't have to spam out the wave here. There's a difference between annoying and useful. If this wave is outside of the turret, Misfortune has no Q, Misfortune has no E, you have Nami healing. Why do we have to AFK shove this wave? It's the same concept as the Vigor earlier. So now all of a sudden, because of that Q, we've desynced, desynced, desynced. All of these three are going to go to the void here in a second. And Nami should be assisting to try to fix them so that they don't go to the void. Like that one. So we did assist in 1 out of the 4 minions that required assistance. And then also, there was no reason for Sivir to be able to Q that, which screwed up 3 out of the 4 minions that were in existence. That one's gone to the void. That one's... Ah! No! Okay. So Nami hit the wrong one, then Sivir Q'd correctly, and then auto-attacked randomly, and now that one's gone to the void. Yeah. Okay, so last thing under tower needs help. But there is something there. He is attempting to do it. It's just incorrect attempting. So it just has to be practiced. But the thought process is there. Okay. Bombs do nothing. We're just spamming out the wave on Sivir. By the way, if we wanted to spam out the wave on Sivir, we can just do it super early. Like, this can be W right here, right? Yeah, he has W up. This can just be W right here and just fight it. Because Zillion has no bomb, so if Zillion walks up to auto-attack Sivir, Sivir can look for the fight back. Because also Misfortune has no E. So then Nami's off in fucking Kansas. And if Nami's actually playing up to be able to pressure out after the cooldowns are down, then Sivir can actually, like, play up here and potentially kill both. Based on where jungler is. But we know jungler's top because Court saw him. Because we freeze the wave. Court had the ability to go to both. That's correct. Because he decided mid lane. Because mid lane took a really, really bad reset again. Because he had to. Because he's over spamming. Bot lane is now over spamming. So realistically, Sivir can be at like 80% mana still. Sivir could potentially be at 80% mana while Misfortune is at 0 in the same context. Because Sivir is now over spamming to be able to rectify nothing. Because you can just farm under tower correctly. And for farming under tower, by the way, as a future reference. The way it works is if a minion is full life, it takes 2 turret shots plus 1 auto attack to kill a melee. 1 turret shot plus 2 auto attacks to be able to kill a caster if you do not have double longsword. The second you have double longsword, or like D-blade plus longsword, and you're not incredibly far behind, it becomes 1 tower shot plus 1 auto attack. You can do it yourself. So most champions, if you take the attack speed rune, have enough attack speed to be able to get 2 auto attacks in before the minion dies. And the way to do that, let me back this up for a wave to be underneath turret. Back it up, back it up. Okay. The way to do it is before the turret targets it, you'll be able to auto attack. So like right here, if you throw out auto 1, you can then throw out auto 2 while the next shot is mid-air. And then right before it hits will be the second shot. Most mages can do this too in mid lane. Then from there, you can get the next auto attack off while the turret is retargeting. And then the same process applies. But if you screw it up once, you just have to reset. Because once the timing is off, the timing is off. Is there anything more to be able to get off of this? Oh, hi, Brent. Hi. I am muted in Discord. Hello. You still here, Brent? You're also muted. Alrighty. I'm going to go back to mute in Discord then. I do have a stream open for Brent, so we can talk about things as well. So is there anything else that occurs in this laning phase? I'm just going to go real fast, see what else is here. Oh, I heard movement.
Sorry, I didn't realize my mic was muted.
That's alright. Hello.
Hello, hello.
What time is it? 11:13? Okay. So realistically, do you want the short version of this game?
Yeah, if you don't mind me running it. I mean, I kind of got a little feeling from what you're talking about when I came in, talking about the bot lanes, that not much was happening.
Sure. So in top lane, Gangplank just constantly AFK fights. Aatrox does not AFK fight, actively did freeze one of the 2 times, screwed up the freeze the second time, like he had it and got rid of it. But neither side seems to play around the jungler at all. Neither side seems to understand how to play their champion fully, so that would have to be addressed. I did address it earlier. Builds are also incorrect for both sides. Runes are incorrect for both sides slightly. Excuse me. Overall, looks like silver. And then there was a lot of points to be able to go over off that. That was functional. Jungler is... He played Rek'Sai as a farming jungler and ganked 1 time in 12 minutes.
Oh, no.
We can stop there. Court also full cleared versus a farming or a ganking jungler instead of 3 camping to be able to defend top, especially with Ignite top lane, which Ignite top lane is a massive red flag, especially on Gangplank. In mid lane, Vlad is just AFK shoving. Veigar is also AFK shoving. One has mana, one does not. And then Veigar also attempted to kill Vlad multiple times. Vlad never dropped below 3/4 life, even through multiple, like I think there was 7 fights, 6 or 7 fights in the laning phase. None of them even came close to killing him. Not even close. And then neither side knew where to ward or where junglers were. That's the short version. Basically, no one knows where junglers are or what they do. And because of that, no one's been punished with it.
Sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. That's fixable. And then bot lane, what you saw, AD carries are just constantly AFK pushing the wave with no thought behind what's actually trying to occur, with minor instances of poke along the way. Neither support is doing anything.
It's doing nothing. Yep.
That is the reality. Because especially when it's supposed to be completed at 11 minutes, and at now 7 minutes, is it still exactly 20 difference? It's exactly 20 difference. We've gone a minute 40 with neither support touching anyone. That's a pretty big red flag. So there's nothing to be gained from the bot lane part. Is what it is. We go forward. Now you can see my background. So let me close that. Let me open documents. And now we can go match 1, game 2. Which was... Oh, this was the Assassins versus Poke.
Oh, right.
Why is there that little green speck? Am I crazy? Is there a little green speck on stream in the bottom, like, down here?
Let me see. No, there's not.
Oh, there is. No, there is. Oh, it's gone now. Okay. What the hell? That's weird. Huh. Oh, I screwed up. I know where I screwed up. I'm opening it through the current League client instead of the Frozen Fetch.
Ooh.
Why is that there then? It's on my OBS. That's weird. Which part's actually insane? Okay, so you do see it, like right at the bottom. Oh, it's not on stream though. Also, why is my stream 648p? What? What is wrong with my stream settings? Okay. Audio, video. Oh! Why is it scaling? Oh, no. It reset my settings, so this quality is awful. Okay, nope. I'm gonna fix this. Before you progress, I'm gonna fix this. So, we will be right back, and the quality is gonna be infinitely better here in like 30 seconds, but I have to end stream to fix it.